or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back to a very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining us. As you can see from the thumbnail, Judge Hannah Dugan, she's not really a judge anymore. I mean, she hasn't officially stepped down, but of course they've taken every single case off her docket. She's not going to be returning to the bench. So for all intents and purposes, Hannah Dugan is a former judge. Well, she has been found guilty. She was found innocent on one charge and guilty of another charge. Innocent of the misdemeanor, but guilty of the felony. That means Hannah Dugan is looking at as little as 5 years in prison. But it could be as much as 14 to 16 years in prison. So I hope it was all worth it for the fat slob you see on screen next to her, who was, of course, deported by the Trump administration. All right, now, over on YouTube, it gave me the option to, start a vertical stream, I guess, for shorts, and it doesn't reformat the video in any way, so it looks garbage. It's literally just the sector of the screen. Very, very interesting. All right, so anyways, I probably won't be doing that again. All right, what I need from you is to hit that like button, help us out by sharing the show. Sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're about to get into it right about now. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you being here. We have so much to discuss today. You know, we've often talked about the secret alliance between President Trump, Russia, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, China, the sovereign alliance, if you will. And I think today we had yet another confirmation from Vladimir Putin as to who the real fight is truly against. You know, it does not escape me, and I'm sure it doesn't escape you as well, that those who tell us that Vladimir Putin and Russia are existential threats to Western society, to freedom, to liberty and justice, quite often those are all people who are actively working against freedom, liberty, justice, and our constitutional republic. The people who are very often involved in the same type of sick, satanic crimes that we see people committing all around the world, and certainly here in the United States. Take a look at this. Vladimir Putin, and actually give me just a moment, because I just see that everything is not formatted properly on my OBS either. So let me fix the foxhole chat. That's going to be that one right there, and that is way too big. So yesterday I had to plug in a new monitor cable, and it reset my settings as to how large everything was on screen. And so everything is off. Let me make that a little bit smaller for the foxhole chat, for the pilled chat, for the rumble chat. We'll go down, pull that up, and then decrease that. Tuck that in a little bit right there, and then do the same with the foxhole chat right there. Okay, and then I need to fix the screen so that you guys can see what I'm intending for you to screen. That's the slideshow. We're going to get rid of the slideshow. Yes, and then where is it? Where the front screen? There we go. Okay. There we go. This is what I intend for you guys to see. All right, so check this out. Vladimir Putin says that who Russia is truly fighting against is not the West. It's actually a war against Satanism, the occult, and sorcery, which sounds just about spot on.
I truly agree with you. Satanism and cult services, sorceries, this is nonsense. That is something that confuses people, brings them to darkness, and affects them greatly, affects their psyche, their morale, and we need to fight against it, but do it carefully without violating human rights. Your colleagues have mentioned it as well. I truly agree with you. Satanism.
Thank you very much to Texas Tanya, who says, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you as well, Tanya. And actually, somebody had wished a Merry Christmas of sorts over there on Cash App. I need to make sure I mention that before I forget. That would be from Jessica Armstrong. God bless you and your family. Thank you so much, Jessica. And then Lorraine also sent a message. Zach rocks. Yes, mind control is all around us. Thank you so much, Lorraine. Appreciate you. All right, so yeah.
And cult services.
It should make everyone suspicious when you see that satanic global elites are attacking the only Orthodox Christian nation in the entire world and telling us that they are our enemies. They are not our enemies. They have more in common with us than many of the people who are so-called elected leaders here in the United States of America. Now, we also have a new update, a tragic update on the case of Greg Biffle and his family, the plane crash that took place in Charlotte, North Carolina yesterday. So it was recently reported by the parents of Greg's wife, Christina, that during the last moments of their lives, Christina texted her parents and said, "We're in trouble." And then it was shortly after that the plane went down. Now, we've also learned that there were quite a few more people in that plane than simply Greg, his wife, Christina, and their children. There were also friends of theirs that were on the plane as well. So there was Greg himself. He was 55 years old. Christina, their son, Ryder, who was 5. Greg's daughter, Emma, who is 14 from a previous relationship. And then Dennis Dutton and his son, Jack, and then also a man by the name of Craig Wadsworth. So there was a total of like 7 people on that plane, and none of them survived. They were on their way to Florida for a birthday trip, and it's just obviously a very tragic event. No one expected this to happen, and it was probably hell on earth for Christina's parents to receive that message and then see what was going on. So yes, kick dreaming. I mean, every time a plane crashes, people mention that. You know, a small plane like that is owned by, you know, a single individual rather than a commercial plane, I think those are a little bit more likely to go down. But so far, I haven't seen anything suggested as to why somebody would want to kill Greg and his family. It could have been even just Dennis Dutton or Craig Wadsworth, why they were perhaps the targets of this, if this was a targeted attack. We'll continue to dig on this and see what else we can find, but all around it is 100% tragedy. Now, we also have a very interesting piece, which is a line from Ghislaine Maxwell's habeas corpus petition that we briefly read over yesterday. We didn't go through the whole thing, but we saw the justification that Ghislaine Maxwell had given as to why she believed that she should have her conviction overturned. Now, this is definitely not something that was public before, but she mentions that new evidence reveals that there were 25 men with which the plaintiff's lawyers reached secret settlements. Now, these obviously 25 men could equally be considered co-conspirators in Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking racket. None of these men, she says, have been prosecuted, and none has been revealed to Ghislaine Maxwell, who, of course, should have had this information revealed to her, could have been exculpatory information. She says she would have called them as witnesses if she had known that they had entered into these secret deals with the lawyers for the people that were sex trafficked by Jeffrey Ghislaine and all of these men. So that certainly does put a new spin on it. And considering that we have all of that grand jury information, which began to be released today, it is entirely possible that we're going to learn the names of those 25 men very shortly. Now, here is a brief clip with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche talking about this deadline for the Epstein Files Transparency Act that was, of course, passed in Congress, signed by President Trump. And Deputy AG Blanche would have been one of those people who were making sure that all of these files came out to the public. And as I said, they began to be released today. We're going to take a look at some of them.
So in these files, are we going to learn any new information about Epstein and people that may have been associated with him?
So yes, so today is the 30 days and I expect that we're going to release several 100,000 documents today, and those documents will come in all different forms, photographs and other materials associated with all of the investigations into Mr. Epstein. And just so everybody appreciates, President Trump has said for years that he wants full transparency, and he wants the Department of Justice to release everything that we can.
What the heck? That's not right.
So in these files,
Said for years that he wants full transparency, and he wants the Department of Justice to release everything that we can with respect to this investigation and cases. And we saw during the Biden administration radio silence from the very Democrats that are screaming from congressional steps today that we haven't done enough. But guess what? President Trump signed that law 30 days ago, and we have been working tirelessly since that day to make sure that we get every single document that we have within the Department of Justice, review it, and get it to the American public. Now, the most important thing that the Attorney General has talked about, that Director Patel has talked about, is that we protect victims. And so what we're doing is we are looking at every single piece of paper that we are going to produce, making sure that every victim, their name, their identity, their story, to the extent it needs to be protected, is completely protected.
Julia over on YouTube says, the Epstein files used to be a heck of a lot more fun for conservatives until Trump made it abundantly clear to everyone that the information they contain will embarrass him. Julia, I'm just going to tell you, you're fucking delusional. You know what happened? For years, conservatives were the only people who were interested in having the Epstein files released. People on the left, Democrat politicians, were certainly not interested in having those files released. You know what President Trump did? He tricked all of you into demanding the release of the Epstein files along with us because you suddenly thought that there was going to be something in there that would be damaging to him. Since you're here, let me give you an education. First of all, there were many people who remained friends with Jeffrey Epstein long after he became a registered sex offender. Donald Trump was not one of them. Donald Trump actually kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago well before Jeffrey Epstein had any criminal charges or an investigation brought against him. He was the only person ever publicly associated with Jeffrey Epstein in any way for that to be the case. Donald Trump also never flew on Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express. Something you may not know, and I'll forgive you for being ignorant, is that Jeffrey Epstein had multiple airplanes. He had one airplane on which Donald Trump took rides from Florida back to New York on a couple of different occasions. Of course, his family was with them. But Lolita Express was an airplane that Jeffrey Epstein purchased after Donald Trump kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago and said, you guys are not allowed here anymore because you're creeping on little girls. Donald Trump also was the one who actually went to the FBI and to Palm Beach police to say, hey, you should probably go look at Jeffrey Epstein because he's taken girls from Mar-a-Lago and he's turned them into terrible situations. Donald Trump was also the only person ever publicly associated with Jeffrey Epstein in any way who was willing to speak to the lawyer for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. They didn't have to chase him down. They didn't have to serve him with a subpoena. No, Donald Trump called the lawyer and he said, what can I do to help you? Let's sit down and let me tell you everything that I know about Jeffrey Epstein. Now, every one of your sacred cows on the left never bothered to speak to the lawyers for the victims, never bothered to come forward, continued to receive Jeffrey Epstein's money, go to his home and get hand jobs from little girls, go to Jeffrey Epstein's island and abuse children right alongside of him. Donald Trump never did any of that. So either you're stupid or you're simply ignorant because you're unwilling to admit the truth to yourself. Or perhaps, and this is totally possible, you're just here as a disingenuous bad actor. But either way, you're wrong. You're completely fucking wrong. And let me tell you one more thing. It was Donald Trump's Department of Justice that charged and arrested Jeffrey Epstein back in 2019. And it was Donald Trump's second administration right now that released all of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein. It could have been anyone before him. It could have been Joe Biden. It could have been Kamala Harris. It could have been anybody on the left that was interested in this issue. But as I said, none of them were ever interested in this issue. And I'm now going to play a nice little clip, which you should probably love. Kamala Harris was actually just asked about why the Biden administration did not release Jeffrey Epstein files, why they didn't even talk about it. Well, I would imagine it was probably because their friends were implicated in this. If they thought Donald Trump was implicated in this while they were trying to put him in prison for the rest of his life, that would have been the perfect time to come out with it. But as you know, they didn't. They chose not to do anything of the sort because rather than implicating Donald Trump, it was implicating all of the people that were actually doing things with Jeffrey Epstein and these kids. Terrible, terrible stuff.
Why didn't the Biden administration release those files? Was that something that they felt would look bad while they're running against this guy, or why didn't they come out during your administration?
To give you an answer that will not satisfy your curiosity, I will tell you, we, perhaps to our damage, but we strongly and rightly believed that there should be an absolute separation between what we wanted as an administration and what the Department of Justice did.
Okay, so what about all the secret meetings with prosecutors all around the country so that they could get charges filed against Donald Trump and his lawyers and the alternate electors? What about the direct contact with Special Counsel Jack Smith or the contact with AG Merrick Garland demanding that Donald Trump's home be raided, even though there was not any sort of predicate to even enter his home?
We absolutely adhered to that, and it was right to do that. The Justice Department would make its decisions independent of any political or personal vendetta or concern that we may have. And that's the way it worked.
Okay, so then if that's the way it's supposed to work, then why did all of y'all come out and demand that Donald Trump now suddenly release the Epstein files? You know, this is how it works. The DOJ is part of the executive branch, and the president has the power, by all means, to suggest, hey, this is in the public interest, considering that we over here on the right had been clamoring for the release of any Epstein information for years, and nobody ever paid attention to it. Then it would have been a good thing for them to do that. But they never did. They never bothered to do so. And so now, wouldn't you know it, Julia, now that the Epstein files are being released, once again, it is implicating the people who actually flew on Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express, the people who went to Jeffrey Epstein's private island, the pedophile island. It is the people who continued to hang out with Jeffrey Epstein, go to his brownstone in New York City, get private massages, hanging out. If anybody here walked into someone's palatial Manhattan estate and you walk inside and the walls of this home are lined with pictures of naked little girls, what would you do? I know what I would do. I would say, I'm getting the hell out of here. What kind of a person are you? But There wasn't a single Democrat that went to Jeffrey Epstein's house who had a problem with naked little kids emblazoned all over the inside of that property. Isn't that interesting? Well, here's Bill Clinton getting a massage from one of Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking victims. You can see that right here. It also turns out that Bill Clinton asked Moroccan King Mohammed VI if he could bring 2 guests to his wedding in 2002. And guess who those guests were? It was Jeffrey Epstein and it was Ghislaine Maxwell. That's right, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And it was also Jeffrey Epstein who visited the Bill Clinton White House nearly 20 times. I'm sure it's nothing, though, right? I'm sure it's nothing. Not going to implicate Bill Clinton in anything here with a known sex trafficker. So we learned this as part of this new series of documents that were just released by Donald Trump's Department of Justice. Oh, here's an old favorite of mine, Bill Clinton sitting casually across from the desk at Jeffrey Epstein. Look at that, thick as thieves. Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein were well acquainted with each other. Ghislaine Maxwell was also a guest at the wedding of Chelsea Clinton. You might remember that. You must be tight with somebody to invite them to the wedding of your only child that you had with another man that's not your husband. But that's neither here nor there. All right, now here we can actually see Jeffrey Epstein's, I believe this is one of his homes, in a pool where Ghislaine Maxwell and Bill Clinton, Hillary is nowhere to be found. They're swimming with a young woman. Now, to Ghislaine and Bill's credit, we cannot see this individual's face. We don't know if they are a victim or if they are merely an associate, a female associate. But it is definitely a woman that is not Hillary Clinton, and Bill Clinton is nearly naked with 2 adult females, or 1 female and perhaps 1 minor. We can't tell because we can't see that individual's face. But look, Bill is getting real comfy. Oh, and look at that. Wouldn't you know it? Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein hanging out together wearing silk pajamas. I will tell you this. As an adult man, I have never hung out with another adult man wearing silk pajamas, just lazing around the house, waiting for somebody to come give me a handy. But that looks like exactly what Bill Clinton's doing here with Jeffrey Epstein. Look, he's got his arm around him. He's like, hey, bud, thanks again for having me over. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everything you've done for me, Jeff. All those times you came to advise me at the White House, I really appreciate it. Here they are with Mick Jagger, none other than Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones. And I've heard some crazy things about Mick Jagger and young people before. These documents that have just been released, this is part of the tranche of documents coming out of the case in New York. This is actually Jeffrey Epstein's 2019 sex trafficking case. He could have been charged as a sex trafficker under any previous administration, notably any Democrat administrations, but he never was. He never was at any time. And right here, there is going to be undoubtedly many different things that are pulled from this. But the one thing I can tell you, once again, is that there is nothing damaging to Donald Trump in these documents because, bitch, you would have found it by now. They would have found it years ago. They would have been using it against President Trump at every chance they got, and they haven't. The only thing you have is coming into a random live stream of somebody that you know likes Donald Trump, who believes in Donald Trump's mission, making America great again. And instead, you have to drop innuendo. You have to drop these comments as if you're such a smart little cookie. You're not. You're dim. You are dim. There is no light in your eyes. You are a soulless, childless wench. Misfit 556 says, Greg was an amazing human being. He did amazing work in helping North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. Yes, we talked about that yesterday. Absolutely horrible what's happened. Texas Tanya, thank you again. Thank you again to Sean Joe for the can, Good Dog for the can, Jeffinak for 100,000 gold pills. Love your shows. From Alaska, Badlander 2. Awesome, brother. Thank you very much for being here. Stay warm. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. No thanks, Joe. Says, happy Friday, Lisa and Zach. Thanks for your past week of great reporting. Hope that you both have a great weekend and get to relax a bit. God bless you. Please stay safe. We absolutely will. Appreciate you. All right, so let us continue here with the day's news, because it doesn't get any better for the Democrats. Jared Isaacman, the prior pick for Donald Trump's director of NASA, who had it for some reason taken from him by the president and then once again handed back. I think this had something to do with a rift between Elon and other people in the Trump administration. Everybody's a backbiting whore, aren't they? They're always trying to get closer to the president and like put a wedge between people that he loves and that he trusts and that he takes advice from. Well, I think that, as I said at the time, the rift between Donald Trump and Elon Musk was not going to last. It clearly didn't. Jared Isaacman was a close associate, a friend of Elon Musk. And then once Donald Trump and Elon Musk kissed and made up, he came back in, and now he's going to be the director of NASA. Now, President Trump has also signed a brand new decree stating that we're going to be on the moon again by 2028. Now, there are a lot of people out there who are going to look at this and say, sure, Jan. Sure, Jan.
Sure, Jan.
But if we go back to the moon in 2 years, then I think that'll be pretty awesome. He's also set a date of 2030 for a permanent moon base. So Jared Isaacman can be seen right here. I think that's his parents, to be honest with you. Looks like they're the ones who are holding the Bible for him. And hold on, I need to come out of reader mode so that we can look at the entirety of his announcement, his thank you to the president. He says, well, it's official now. I want to again express my sincere appreciation to President Donald J. Trump, POTUS, for nominating me to lead NASA, and to the United States Senate and Chairman Cruz for their diligence and fairness throughout the confirmation process. Honey, will you turn the air conditioning on? It is getting hot inside the office. I am also grateful to Secretary Duffy for his leadership as acting administrator during this transition, and to my wife, Monica, my family, my friend, Senator Sheehy, and everyone who offered their support along the way. As I step into this role, I make these personal commitments. Mission: I will champion the bold objectives of human space exploration, scientific discovery, and a thriving orbital economy that ensures America's leadership in space. We will never again give up our capabilities to reach for the stars, and we will never settle for second place. Integrity: I will serve responsibly, transparently, and without personal gain, covering every cost I am legally permitted to, and fully adhering to my ethics agreement. My loyalty is to my country, my president, and the space agency that has inspired me since I was a child. Urgency: I will intensely focus the agency on achieving the near impossible, the very reason NASA was established in the first place. We will eliminate the bureaucracy that impedes progress and empower the best and brightest to take ownership, move quickly, accept smart risks, and act with a relentless focus on mission success. Inspiration: every launch, every scientific breakthrough must inspire the next generation to dream bigger, to reach higher, and to believe that anything is possible. In addition to my existing philanthropic efforts, I will donate my salary as administrator to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center's Space Camp to help prepare the pioneers of tomorrow. I always wanted to go to Space Camp when I was a kid. I am humbled by this opportunity, proud to serve, and ready to work alongside the most talented minds in America as we continue the greatest adventure in human history. Sincerely, Jared Isaacman, NASA Administrator. I got to be honest, man. I want space to be real so bad because I want to go one day. I think that would be the coolest thing in the world. Yes, I know, Jan. You don't even have to say it, Jan. That's why I gave that sort of a caveat there. I wish, I would love to be there. I'd love to try it. I love the idea of exploration. I'm a big fan of sci-fi, and we can just leave it at that. We'll see what happens. All right. Now, we also, Emerald Dragon says, everyone knows Zach only wears his silk Miami Vice PJs when he's alone with his guns and his gun lube. And Lisa. Lisa is always by my side. But I'm just saying, never got into my PJs as an adult man, especially not silk ones where you're lazing around and, you know, there's the implements of massages around. Totally crazy. All right, we have an update on the situation with Miss Jeannie and her attacker, Michaela Ponce. Jeannie has given another interview, and Michaela Ponce's mother happens to be a patriot. She has actually spoken up and denounced her own daughter. So she's come forward and she's put out a statement. We're actually going to do a quick vibe check on Jeannie's Give, Send, Go. Remember yesterday it was close to I think, $230,000. What are we at now? Now we're at $260,000. Jeannie is going to be able to retire. That's pretty awesome. All right, so the statement, actually, I think, yes, here it is. All right, so her mother's name is, where is it? Debbie Sylvie. Okay, so she says, first, I'd like to start off by providing my deepest apologies to Jeannie. Jeannie, I am deeply sorry that you were treated in such a horrific way. No one should ever be treated in such a way. The way you conducted yourself should be an inspiration to many. Like I said, Jeannie's a class act. Unfortunately, my daughter did not conduct herself in any type of an appropriate way. I am mortified by her behavior. Myself and my family do not agree with nor approve of Michaela's expressed beliefs or behavior. As a mother, it breaks my heart to see my child treat another person with such disdain. She meant to say disdain, but she wrote disdain. I do not condone Michaela's actions. As a result of this horrific incident, myself and other family members, even those who have no relationship with Michaela, have received harassing and threatening phone calls and messages from the public. I would like the public to understand that what one family member does should not reflect on others. This is so true. I see this all the time. People, let the actions of an individual stand on their own. Just because one person is a giant piece of shit, it does not mean that their brother or their mother or anybody else in their life is a terrible person like that. I know, I think we've said on many different occasions, it's certainly not fair for European of descent Americans today to be blamed for slavery, right? It's just as retarded to blame somebody's sister or mother for their bad behavior. Like, people can be bad all by themselves. They don't need to be laying that at the feet of the people who love them, who should be able to expect that they're going to be out there acting like civilized adults. I understand that Michaela issued an apology, and I would hope that she is truly and deeply remorseful for her behavior. I would also hope that she and everyone witnessing this can grow to do better and treat each other with only kindness and respect. Now, Miss Beeman, Jeannie Beeman, has said that Target has also stood by her entirely. Her manager has called her. She hasn't been going back to work because of the whole thing, but her manager called and was like, Jeannie, we just want to make sure you're okay. We understand that, this is a big deal. She is totally blown away by the support through the fundraising. But she's not planning to leave her job. She said she loves everybody at Target so much, and she loves having the opportunity to go out every day and have something to do. And she's just really grateful for everybody that's reached out and shown their gratitude and their support of her. Now, her daughter, of course, also spoke out. And Monday, the 12th, that was the anniversary of Jeannie's husband's suicide. So this whole time has been, difficult for her. It definitely was not the best time for Michaela Ponce to come up and attack her in a Target like that. Now, here's the other thing. The other place that Michaela screwed up. Jeannie is a treasure in the community. Everybody that knows her loves her. Everybody believes that what happened to her was abhorrent and that Michaela Ponce is a terrible person. But again, Jeannie wants everybody to know she does not want you to lash out against Michaela. Michaela has to look in the mirror every day and live with herself, and that's got to be difficult.
A lot of people are upset. A lot of people are angry. They want repercussions for that woman. They want her to lose her job. They want, I guess, some sort of karma. But you've been on record. You don't want anything bad to happen to her. Why is that?
Two rights don't make a wrong. Two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, I've always told my girls as they were growing up and stuff, me wanting her to lose her job or go to jail or anything, that's not right. It's not, to my point of view. It's not humanly right. She made a mistake. She's paying for it, I guess, with all the, the publicity that went the opposite way, I think, of what she thought it would go.
Yes, it went the exact opposite of the way that she thought it would go. Much like Julia coming into my chat and thinking she could school me on Donald Trump. Nobody knows this shit better than me, girl. And just like Michaela Ponce thought that she was going to post a mean girl video about a 72-year-old woman with a big heart who goes to work at Target every day because she just wants to have the opportunity to talk to people and hang out with them. And she got a very rude awakening. A couple of more thank yous over here on Rumble. So, Brogent says, Zach, I tagged you on X shortly after yesterday's show because we had a local post about police locking down a street in Salem, New Hampshire. Felt it was about the Brown shooter after you mentioned the Salem connection, and it was. It definitely was. And we are about to talk about the Brown shooter and the MIT shooter here in just a moment. I also need to say thank you to Jim Kyle, who says, Merry Christmas, Zach and Lisa. Thank you so much for that very generous $50 rant over on Rumble. All right, now, about a week and a half ago, Marco Rubio had revealed that the NGO industrial complex was going to be starved out of existence. We've already done away with USAID, but there are still other areas of monetary funding which have been making their way into the NGO world. And a lot of it has been as a result of the United States government, State Department, and other agencies. That is done. Foreign aid should be used for the purpose of backing up what America's ideals are, not to be used to destroy our constitutional republic. Now, Marco was asked about it again at State, and he had some more comments on it about the way things are going to be from now on.
Of our foreign policy, and it should be used for the purpose of furthering the national interest. That doesn't mean we don't care about human rights. That doesn't mean we don't care about starvation. That doesn't mean we don't care about hunger. That doesn't mean we don't care about humanitarian need. What it does mean, however, is that even foreign aid, which is not charity, it is an act of the U.S. taxpayer. Now, American charities are free to give their money to whoever they want, as long as it's not a sanctioned entity. But the United States and the taxpayer money should be spent in furtherance of our foreign policy, should be spent in places and on things that further our foreign policy. And even that is not unlimited. We have a limited amount of money that we can dedicate to foreign aid and humanitarian assistance. And that has to be applied in a way that furthers our national interests. And that's what we have sought to do as well. And in that endeavor as well, we have empowered the regional bureaus and our embassies to play a dramatic role. In fact, they are not just the implementers of this. They, in many cases, are the ones that are suggesting and are leading the
New case with a name like Julia, I can only assume she's a white, middle-aged, liberal woman. And as such, we know she is depressed and upset. Sad all the time, maybe guilty about her immutable characteristics, growing up with all that white privilege. Maybe feeling like she should be doing more to help marginalized and indigenous people. Probably has a Trans Lives Matter bumper sticker, maybe a rainbow flag rather than the flag of the United States of America, and, you know, showing up and doing a little shit talking on YouTube. It's the least she can do.
Response. And so bringing the tools of foreign aid underneath the umbrella of our broader foreign policy has been an important and dramatic reform. Even in the midst of all that, we remain engaged around the world, including in conflicts that perhaps are not central to everyday life in America, but the president has made it a priority to be a peacemaker.
All right, so the money train has concluded. Now, something is going on with my browser, and I don't know what the heck it is, but take a look at this. So this is a throwback to that fake news Vanity Fair article about Susie Wiles from the other day. So I noticed that recently Marco Rubio had changed his profile pic to this picture. And it's just Marco standing in the corner looking down at his shoes. Now, Ukraine flag too, cat urine and boxes of Franzia wine dotting the floors of the apartment of her small 500 square foot Brooklyn flat. So Marco is just standing here in the corner looking at his shoes. Now, I thought when I saw this, like maybe this is a play on the story that JD told the other day when he and Marco came into the office and President Trump looks at their shoes and he's like, your shoes are terrible. He's like, take a look at this catalog. He's like, pick some shoes out. And President Trump ordered them like 4 pairs of shoes that I guess are very high class. And so maybe Marco's just looking at his shoes. Anyways, Vanity Fair, I guess, published this picture in the article, along with the quote that was allegedly from Susie Wiles about Marco being a janitor or something like that. So, Brooke Taylor, I guess she's a Fox correspondent. She says, context, cabinet members are making light of the Vanity Fair article that Susie Wiles called a hit piece that disregarded significant context. In that article, the reporter describes a conversation where Vice President Vance jokingly told the photographer, I'll give you $100 for every person you make look really shitty compared to me, and $1,000 if it's Marco. So this picture of Rubio awkwardly bending over was included in the article. So then he made it his profile picture, and J.D. Vance shared it and trolled, I guess I owe that guy $1,000. Anyways, I thought that was hilarious. So, yeah, Marco has really impressed me. I never liked him before. I think he's done good things as Secretary of State. There was also an article that Daily Mail published, which I couldn't find. I only saw the headline for. But allegedly, they were saying that Charlie Kirk was going to be JD's VP in 2028, which puts an entirely new spin on his assassination. And that after 8 years, Charlie was going to run for president, and Don Jr. was going to become his VP. Now, I don't have any more information than that because all I saw was the headline. I couldn't find it on Daily Mail. If anybody can find it and they want to send it to me, I'll go over it here on the show today. But I thought that was crazy. I absolutely thought that was crazy. It puts a completely different spin on the fact that he was murdered because theoretically, I mean, he could have been vice president in 2 years from now. All right. Now, let's talk about Hannah Dugan. Judge Hannah Dugan, Milwaukee Judge Hannah Dugan, who, as I said in the introduction, is no longer a judge for all intents and purposes. She had all of her caseload stripped away from her. She hasn't been able to come to work at the court. She's essentially on leave, but she's being defiant. She refuses to step down from her position, or as of right now, as far as I know, she hasn't stepped down. Maybe something new has happened in the last 45 minutes or so. But as you know, she was just found guilty of obstruction for helping that illegal alien avoid ICE agents so that he could run away and then be chased down, because the ICE agents were quite literally twice his size and half his weight. It didn't take very long for them to pounce on him and then put him under arrest. So she was acquitted of the first misdemeanor count, but she was found guilty on count 2, which is felony obstruction. So 5 years in prison is the minimum penalty for that particular charge. So this is a huge victory for the Trump administration. This should be a lesson, a warning to any other judges out there who think that they are above the law. Federal prosecutors in Milwaukee County Circuit Court charged her with obstruction and concealing an individual to prevent arrest. Now, I'm not sure why the jury didn't find her guilty of that. I feel like that was an easy one. But if they had to find her guilty of something, the fact that it was the felony, I am very, very happy about that. So this 5 years in prison is what she's looking at. Now, the jury did not deliberate for a particularly long time. It was only 6 hours. Hannah Dugan, and her attorneys left the courtroom. They were a little somber. I saw some courtroom sketches from inside, and she looked very upset. Did not look happy. They ducked into a conference room after the verdict was read, and then they closed the door. She has not spoken to reporters about any of this. And I can't imagine that she's going to be speaking to anybody about this, because she is looking at some pretty harsh sentences here. Minimum, as I said, 5 years in prison, up to 14 to 16 years in prison. So, and you know what they do to cops and judges in prison? I mean, they're not kind to them. I would imagine Hannah Dugan is probably going to end up behind bars, and there's going to be a lot of people who know exactly who she is. We're not going to watch the video again. I don't think that's necessary, but we are going to listen to the prosecutor in the case who spoke after the jury handed down that guilty verdict. This is Brad Schimmel. He is the interim U.S. attorney in Wisconsin. Law
enforcement.
Let me just make this big for everybody.
Is going to execute.
Oh, Misfit Angie, thank you so much, my dear, for the 5 gifted subscriptions. And you in the chat, if you got one of those subscriptions, make sure that you thank Angie.
Arrest warrants. And frankly, in most cases, the arrest warrants are issued by a judge. Law enforcement should be entitled to identify the safest place to do that. And a circuit court building that has a metal detector and security check-in at the front door is among the safest places we can find. I heard suggestions during the trial, well, why didn't they do a traffic stop? Traffic stops are inherently dangerous. You've all reported on the news of traffic stops that turn into dangerous chases where...
Yeah, and let's just look at the circumstances. I mean, this guy ran from the courtroom. He clearly did not want to be arrested by ICE. Is there any reason to believe that he wouldn't have done the exact same thing when he was behind the wheel of like a Ford F-250 or, you know, any kind of car that he might have been driving? That becomes a dangerous weapon hurtling down the roadway. Think about how many people have died in high-speed chases. It is inherently dangerous to arrest somebody at a traffic stop, and it is inherently safe to arrest them after they're already inside of a courthouse and they've been patted down and you know that there's no weapons to be had.
Citizens and police officers sometimes get killed or hurt. That's not a safer way to do it. This was the safest way to do it. In spite, and like I said,
Tony Evers can't pardon her, bro. He can't pardon her. This is a federal charge, my man. This is a federal charge. Tony Evers, the governor, cannot pardon Hannah Dugan.
I understand the concerns that Chief Judge Ashley expressed, but in the end, this is a way to do it that is safer for everyone.
This is far safer. And Judge Hannah Dugan is getting her comeuppance. This is exactly what she deserves. Now, Speaker Robin Vos, who is not a good dude, everybody knows that, but of course he still is the Speaker of the Assembly in the state of Wisconsin. Now he is demanding the resignation of Hannah Dugan now that she's being found guilty. So this was his statement. Assembly Speaker Robin Vos and Assembly Majority Leader Tyler August released the following statement after Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan was found guilty of obstructing federal immigration agents during an arrest. Last night, a Milwaukee County judge was convicted of a felony for obstructing the U.S. government. Judge Hannah Dugan, while wearing judicial robes of the state of Wisconsin, attempted to impede the lawful work of federal immigration and customs enforcement agents. Under Article 13, Section 3, Subsection 2 of the Wisconsin State Constitution, no person convicted of a felony in any court within the United States, no person convicted in federal court of a crime designated at the time of commission under federal law as a misdemeanor involving a violation of public trust, and no person convicted in a court of state or of a crime designated at the time of commission under the law of the state as a misdemeanor involving a violation of public trust shall be eligible to any office of trust, profit, or honor in this state unless pardoned of the conviction. And mark my words, President Trump is not about to pardon Hannah Dugan. The last time a Wisconsin judge was impeached was in 1853. If Judge Dugan does not resign from her office immediately, the Assembly will begin impeachment proceedings. Under a 1976 Attorney General opinion, Democrat Bronson LaFollette stated that when a state senator was convicted of a felony, a vacancy was created, and the senator was effectually divested of any right or title to the office. His status with reference to the office was fixed at the time of his conviction. 65 Attorney General 264, such is the case here, and Judge Dugan must recognize that the law requires her resignation. Wisconsinites deserve to know their judiciary is impartial and that justice is blind. Judge Hannah Dugan is neither, and her privilege of serving the people of Wisconsin has come to an end. Tricia, thank you so much for the article. I really do appreciate it. It's perfect. Thank you for the rant as well. Let me go ahead and pull this up. All right, Trump's secret succession plan to put Charlie Kirk in the Oval Office and groom a shock new VP. Now, this is not obviously coming from President Trump, so we have to take it with a grain of salt. However, this would not surprise me Warrior Mima, thank you for the donation over on Ko-Fi. ko-fi.com/redpill78. I really do appreciate you, and I'm going to see if you have left a message for us. All right. She says, I love your rants. No apologies, just the facts. Merry Christmas to you and Lisa. Merry Christmas to you as well. $10 donation over on Ko-Fi. Love and happy greetings of the season. Merry Christmas and everything that comes with it to you and your family. I appreciate it. All right. So this says it is a report from Republican power brokers, had quietly mapped out a MAGA succession plan that would eventually put Charlie Kirk in the Oval Office, a confidant of Donald Trump. And Kirk has, this is revealed by a confidant of President Trump and Charlie Kirk. Until the plan was thwarted by his assassination, J.D. Vance was slated to run in 2028 with Kirk as his VP. And according to TPUSA board member Mike Miller, party leaders envisioned Kirk taking over as president 8 years later and grooming Don Jr. to become his VP. The whole gig was it was going to be J.D. Vance and Charlie for the 8 years after Trump. And the next 8 years, it was going to be Charlie and probably Don Jr. But I'm not going to go into private conversations about it, Miller said in an exclusive interview. I am not familiar with who Mike Miller is. I don't know him. J.D. Vance is a very capable and competent man. Charlie introduced him to Trump. The idea of Kirk, who died at 31 on a presidential ticket, was at the front of the Trump family's mind soon after they were introduced to him. In an interview on Megyn Kelly's podcast the day after Kirk's assassination, Don Jr. described his early impressions of Kirk after meeting him in 2016. The kid's brilliant. This kid could be president himself one day. Vance also spoke about his closeness to Kirk on a social media post following his death. And here they are together. Charlie was a true friend. Kind of guy you could say something to and know that it would always stay with him. Okay, I'm looking to see if there's anything new that we haven't heard before. Okay, so who is Mike Miller? Mike Miller, he's 77. He's been friends with Trump for years, said that even without Kirk, Vance still has his backing in 2028. Not surprising there. In an emotional interview, the Illinois-based TPUSA board member described Kirk as a surrogate son and said that he was a father figure for the young nonprofit founder. I talked to him every day of his life from a week after he graduated high school until he was shot. He was like a son to me. Looking to see if there's a picture of Mike Miller. Oh, no. For some reason, I thought this is Erica Kirk's mom. I thought they were saying that was Miller. If you had a son who was the light on earth for you and somebody killed them, that's how it's affected me. If I could have just taken a bullet for him, I would have been thrilled. Miller said that Kirk performed the ceremony for his wedding and recalled a conversation with Kirk's father, Robert, acknowledging his parental role in the late 31-year-old's life. His own natural father said to me, he really was your son. I think I recognized Charlie's talents many years ahead of his father. Sometimes your folks are just there and you don't have the same relationship with them. My dad always said to me, if you see someone with exceptional talents who just needs some backing, there's no better money spent. It comes back to you a million times, and it comes back to the country. At times, especially when he was first getting started, he wasn't sure which direction to turn and what to do, and I was always there for him, giving him the best advice that I could. And then Miller said that he was the one to introduce Charlie Kirk to President Trump in 2015. Is this him? No, this is Charlie's. No. Is that? Okay, yeah. On the right, that is Charlie's mom and Charlie's dad, but I don't see a picture of Mike Miller in here. All right. Either way, I mean, I can totally believe this story. That would make a lot of sense to me. I was actually going to call the Eastern District of Virginia today, but you may have heard us say in the past that Lisa and I are sharing a car. We are down to one car. And so she had to work today. So I had to leave and then go pick her up and then bring her back just before the show started. And I didn't get a chance to call. But Sam Antar pointed. Oh, scroll back. I already closed it. History, reopen last closed tab. Yeah. This is him. Okay, here. Okay, so it wasn't in the reader version of the story for whatever reason. All right, so that's Mike Miller. I don't think I've ever seen him before. Thank you, Tricia. Sam Antar pointed out something very important. So if you'll remember, on December 11th, when the most recent grand jury refused to return a bill of charges against Letitia James. It was first reported by ABC News at 4:06 p.m. Okay, that is highly notable. Why was it notable? Because the grand jury itself did not publicly return their decision until 4:39 p.m. That was 33 minutes after ABC News publicly reported that they were not going to indict again. The only way that that can happen is if ABC News was in direct contact with someone in the courtroom, likely someone on the grand jury at the time that they were convening. Now, that is a felony crime, okay? That is a violation of Rule 6E. Rule 6E governs the communication with a grand jury and the interference of a grand jury. So if we take a look at Rule 6 and go to number E, I will read it to you in its entirety. The court may authorize disclosure at a time, manner, subject to any other conditions it directs of a grand jury manner. So this would have had, the only way that it could have been released is if somebody on the jury leaked that information to ABC News prior to them actually coming out with it. The judge didn't know. The prosecutors didn't know. Letitia James didn't know. The only people who knew were the people on the grand jury. Now, Wounds R Us says, I call BS on the Daily Mail story. What is the minimum age for a president? Charlie would not have been old enough. So he was 31. He was 31. So in 2028, he would have been, you're right, he would have only been 34. Well, maybe he would have turned 35 by the time that, yeah, because his birthday was shortly after. He would have just turned. Hang on. No, because he just turned 31. No, he was 31 when he died. He would have been 32 right now. He would be 33 in 26, 34 in 27, 35 and 28. He would have just been old enough. So I don't know. Like I said, I can't verify that that's the story, but it would make sense to me if they did have a succession plan like that. All right, so the problem here is that nobody seems to be interested in this. My point was that I was going to call the Eastern District of Virginia. I had just gotten to the point where I was looking up their phone call, and then I had to leave to go get Lisa, so I was unable to do it. Yes, he would have been 32 shortly after he got shot, which means that he would have been 35 at the time that he would be elected as vice president in 2028. Nobody seems to be interested in determining what happened, how the jury got this information to ABC News. It's one thing to have sources, anonymous sources that you don't reveal, but it's another thing to commit a crime and have, no, you have to be 35, Lee, 35 years old. It's another thing to interfere with the secret deliberations of a grand jury before the court has authorized its public reveal. So I think that it would be a good idea for people to get a hold of the Eastern District of Virginia and report that a crime was committed. 33 minutes prior to the public reveal of the grand jury's decision, ABC News already knew. G. Fontes says, holy hockey puck, there is absolutely nothing of value listening to Jimmy Dore's show, but I had a good chat with likely a federal agent. LOL, glad to be here in caps. That's funny. All right, now, Roger Keller was the prosecutor who signed the indictment and then presented the case. Apparently, he didn't even bother to show up when the grand jury returned their verdict. The judge noted in the first paragraph of his order, the assistant U.S. attorney who signed the draft indictment did not appear for the hearing. Why not? Why wouldn't you show up? This is a big case. A prosecutor presents the case. He signs the charging document, but then he doesn't show up for the verdict. That I just feel like that is totally sus. So maybe it was one of the prosecutors who leaked this to ABC News. I mean, it doesn't feel like they've been paying as much attention to this or presenting it with as much zeal as Lindsay Halligan did, which is probably why they felt that they needed to get rid of her. So there were 4 signatures on the indictment. You had Deputy AG Todd Blanche. You had the assistant U.S. attorney, then 2 others who worked in the office, but not one of them showed up to see the decision that was made by the grand jury. I don't know, dude. That stinks. That stinks to high heaven. Sean Joe and Ohio Kimmy, thank you for the cookies. Q shook me all night long. Thank you for the cookie. God bless everyone you say. Sean Joe, thank you for another cookie. And then Filter Dog, the Dems were successfully psyoped into demanding the release of the Epstein files. Trump weaponized their Trump derangement syndrome. Yes, a perfect and succinct summation of Donald Trump's brilliant maneuvering and warrior mindset. All right, now, we do need to talk about the Brown University shooting. Yesterday, we learned that they had tracked this individual to a storage unit in Salem, New Hampshire. At the time we went off the air, all we knew was that there was a sort of standoff going on. That individual was later found dead inside that storage unit, and he has been identified as Claudio Neves Valente. And yes, there is definitely a connection between the shooting at Brown and the killing of that MIT fusion physics scientist, the guy who is quite literally working on the very technology that President Trump's new acquisition is also working on. The company that President Trump's Trump Technology and Media Group just merged with are essentially working on next generation nuclear fusion technology, which is going to power everything going into the future. As one of many different areas of focus that Trump and his administration are working on. So this individual is reported to have died as a result of a self-inflicted gunshot wound inside this storage unit in Salem, New Hampshire last night. It was 6 days after the firing, after the shooting and the killing of Ella and Muck at Brown University. And this man is a 48-year-old by the name of Claudio Neves Valente. He was a Brown University student at one time. And like the MIT scientist that was shot and killed in Massachusetts, he was also a Portuguese national. Now, I believe that this is a photograph of him inside the storage unit. He was renting or something like that. He was 48 years old. He is not a U.S. citizen. He was a green card holder. He was also a former Brown student, and he's totally dead now. I can't tell if maybe that's a handgun that he's got on his hip right there. I mean, they're focusing on it, but I don't know why they're focusing on it. In addition to that, the Providence police chief remarked after he was found dead, the really interesting part here is that for all of our criticism about the Providence police, it wasn't them that solved the case. It was that post on Reddit that I read you yesterday that actually broke the case wide open.
That subject matched the description of that person of interest that this police department was desperate to put handcuffs on. That individual was identified as Claudio Neves Valente, date of birth, and he was a 48-year-old man. He was a Brown student. He was a Portuguese national, and
he was not a current Brown student. He was a former Brown student who dropped out after 1 year.
His known address was in Miami, Florida. And I will tell you that he took his own life tonight. We have members of the Providence Police Department up in Salem, New Hampshire. And we also have the BCI unit. Obviously, the FBI and their evidence recovery unit is up there. So the process is being conducted as we speak. And it goes without saying that I would like to personally thank the efforts again of the Providence Police Department, the Rhode Island State Police, the Rhode Island Attorney General.
He doesn't thank the Brown police because the Brown police created the situation. Let's see.
We have a Fox News alert, a high place to...
Okay, just stating that he was dead. I don't think that there was anything additional in this article. All right. But I believe there is something additional in this about how he is connected to the MIT professor, Nuno Loureiro. So they knew each other from Portugal. And as I said, Nuno Loureiro was a fusion research scientist, nuclear science and engineering professor at MIT. He was incredibly intelligent, probably one of the last people that you would want murdered. I mean, that is, if you are a good person, you wouldn't want this guy murdered. He was, dead when they found him. Loureiro, at the time that he was hired, just earlier this year, MIT said Loureiro is taking the helm of MIT's largest lab. More than 250 full-time researchers, staff members, and students work and study in 7 buildings with 250,000 square feet of lab space. They were working at the Plasma Science and Fusion Center. A theoretical physicist and fusion scientist, Loureiro joined MIT as a faculty member in 2016 and was appointed deputy director of the Plasma Science and Fusion Center in 2022. He succeeded somebody named Dennis White, who stepped down at the end of 2023. And the Attorney General of Rhode Island, I don't know anything about the religion of the man who has been identified as the shooter, Claudio Neves Valente. Portugal is like a Catholic nation, but it doesn't mean that everybody there is Catholic. They haven't said anything about his ethnic background, anything other than saying he was originally from Portugal. So the reports that were widely spread that he had yelled Allahu Akbar just before the shooting, this is in response to that. Now, the Attorney General is saying that rather than saying Allahu Akbar, I guess that he barked. That's the new line that they're telling us. Christine over on Ko-Fi, thank you so much for the $5 donation. She says, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I appreciate you, Christine. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for giving us another dancing Trump. All right, so he barked. That's what they're saying happened. We'll hear it in just a second.
And so that's why he followed him out. In terms of what was said, I don't know any more today than what I told you yesterday, or the day before. There are some witnesses who said he said nothing. There are some that say he made a barking noise. Don't ask me. I don't know why. And that's it.
No, he's totally leaving out the part where people reported that he said Allahu Akbar. I feel like that's notable. I still think that they don't want that to be part of the narrative.
There is no other spoken word beyond that we are aware of as we stand before you tonight. And we have spoken to everybody that we have been able to locate who's been inside that building. And just
yeah, well, they're totally incompetent. So a little bit more about Claudio Valente. So this is a description of Claudio Valente from a former colleague of both he and Nuno. This was at the IST in Portugal. It's like a science institute in Portugal. And he wrote about his recollection from his time working with Valente in a public Facebook post. This is translated from Portuguese, so there may be some broken and incomplete sentences. But he said that what he remembers is that Valente was arrogant as a student, and he thought that Brown was a waste of time, and he dropped out after a year. So, Claudio Valente and Nuno Loureiro were my colleagues at the Technological Physical Engineering course. I was 3 years older than them, and I was the monitor of one of them, Claudio, of course. Math Analysis 3 in my final year of undergrad, their second year. In the practical classes, I took one of the classes and João Pilato Matos with the other. The one in charge of the chair and theory class was Nuno Ramau. All of this at the Higher Technical Institute in the academic year of 96 and 97. The Technological Physics Engineering course usually has very good students, But that year of Claudio and Nuno and others was particularly good. Claudio was obviously one of the best, but in class he had a great need to stand out and show that he was better than the rest. At first, he likes to teach good students, but Claudio's attitude was unpleasant, often engaging in quizzes with colleagues and that he didn't consider as brilliant as him, and who probably weren't, but they were his colleagues and they had every right to be there. They were totally unnecessary quirks, which did not help the class at all, and that makes the memory of giving classes to Claudio not the best, unlike many other classmates in the same class. Even so, I kept in touch with Claudio for 3 years, followed up the rest of her course in technical and the beginning of her PhD at Brown. I exchanged, he must be his, not her. I exchanged many emails with him at the, where does it continue? At the time, and saw that he maintained the same attitude as he told me to maintain unnecessary conflicts with PhD colleagues in class, while he again considered them to be far less capable than he was and probably would even be. I could tell that he wasn't enjoying being at Brown University, but I tried to convince him that he would be at an early stage a culture shock, but that the PhD was a great opportunity that he shouldn't waste, and that when he started doing research, and if I finished the curriculum phase, I'm sure he'd like it. That didn't work out. Claudio thought none of it was worth it, and that it was a waste of time, and that others were all incapable. And then he dropped out of his PhD at the end of 1 year. That was my last news from him. Meanwhile, I finished my doctorate. We stopped talking, and the last time I heard of Claudio, he had returned to Portugal, and he was working as a computer scientist at the SAPO portal. That is at PT. Don't know what that is. Never heard from him until today. I never expected that he would be capable of such a thing. So it sounds like he was a bit of a narcissist. Sounds like he thought he was better than everybody else. Also, having the intelligence and experience, he sounds like he'd be a perfect person to recruit to have him do some unsavory things. Just throwing it out there because we don't have any type of a motive. All we know is that Claudio and Nuno attended school together. Claudio was unsuccessful with his PhD program. Nuno was obviously very successful, and he was working on next generation nuclear fusion technology. Now, I mentioned the company that Trump Media Technology Group has merged with. This is a company called Tri-Alpha Energy, and this is, in my opinion, going to be a very, very good business deal, not only for Trump Media Technology Group and for Tri-Alpha Energy as well, but it's going to be good for the entire country because nuclear fusion is like the holy grail of energy production. It's going to revolutionize the ability of humanity to produce energy, to advance into our next stage of evolution. It's going to completely change everything. So they could use nuclear fusion in a lot of different capacities. Propulsion, obviously, energy production as well. And Devin Nunes actually spoke about this in this recent appearance that he had on Fox News. It's a deal worth $6 billion, and I would imagine it's going to increase the value of both TMTG and TAE stock probably in a significant way.
Nuclear fusion has always been there. It really is the holy grail. It's like the sun. Right. But we haven't been able to harness that yet. It just hasn't, the technology, the science. But that's the difference between
Now, considering that this deal just went through and that one of the brightest minds in this field was just gunned down, seemingly in a very strange series of incidents, I have to, my mind immediately goes to the idea that they must be connected. I mean, it's not that often that nuclear fusion scientists, running a major research lab get murdered for no reason. I can't tell you the last time I heard of somebody in this field being assassinated. And it happens at the exact moment that, President Trump, as he's trying to usher America into the golden age and humanity into our next phase of evolution, that we acquire this company, which is working on the exact same technology that this individual who was murdered is working on. I don't see how there can't be a connection here.
AE and all the other nuclear companies out there around the world, this is the one that won't rely on rare earth elements, won't have to rely.
Well, no, Faye, just because we haven't done it yet, or just because it hasn't been reported yet, doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to do it. And that is the whole reason I called it the Holy Grail, because when we are successful, it is going to be a major, major thing. You know, humanity has done all sorts of things in the past that we thought were not possible. Then, frankly, they were impossible until the moment that we did them. So I think that it is I don't think that you should ever say that anything is a complete impossibility.
Buying a bunch of magnets, and it's the only company that's actually built something. That's what we were most impressed with, was not just all the scientists and all the engineers that had worked with private funding, all private funding, I must say. And now what they're looking to do is they need a way to get in and access the public markets. We provide that opportunity for them to access the public markets. And I would just encourage everyone to actually look at this company. I think when you look around the country, look around the world, this is the world's premier nuclear fusion company without question. And when we talk at Trump Media and Technology Group, what do we want to do? We want to acquire crown jewel assets. This is a crown jewel asset that could change the world.
Yes, it has the potential to change the world. Here's the other thing. You know, the nuclear fusion as a technology, it hasn't been commercialized yet. It hasn't successfully been implemented. 75 years ago, I think Devin said, is when, you know, they first started really messing with this. But the reason that it may not have progressed is simply because there were forces at work to ensure that it wouldn't. Because, I mean, think about this. Stan Meyer, the water engine, okay? He had a technology that could transition a gasoline-burning engine into an engine that could run on water. And what happened to him? He went to go sign a deal with allegedly some members of the automobile industry, and he was poisoned at lunch, and then the technology disappeared. So for many people, developing that technology today would be impossible. But that's only because they don't know exactly what Stan Meyer did. They don't have his technology. I think that the same is true for all sorts of clean energy technologies, that they have been successfully produced, but they've been suppressed, and it hasn't been allowed to come out and be given to the people. You know, it also could be possible that it is successfully being used just in a secret capacity. And President Trump's acquiring of TAE, merging with Trump Media Technology Group, is an opportunity to soft launch that to the people and say, oh, look, we just did this, even though they've actually had it for several decades. Let's see. Thank you very much to Trisha. She's got another article here, which is about it's from Portugal, it looks like. We'll pull that up. Jim Kyle says the U.S. military just attacked ISIS in Syria. That does not surprise me. We'll see if we can follow up on that in just a moment. Let me pull up this article from Portugal, though. Portugal working with the U.S. in the shooting case. Okay, so let's see. Foreign Minister of Portugal says it's with great dismay that we know the main suspect who was found dead is a Portuguese citizen. This is also something that obviously causes us great sadness. Deeply regrets the deaths caused by the two attacks. There is a Portuguese citizen involved. U.S. authorities have been in contact with Portugal. Very significant cooperation. Obviously, they want to see if he was acting alone or if there was some other level of coordination. And the rest of this we are going to follow up on with some other stories in just a moment, but let me make sure that there isn't something else in here. Okay, yeah, the rest of this we will be following up with in just a moment. Also, Sea to Shining Sea says the MIT guy worked with Seth Lloyd, who got $300,000 and was close to old Jeff Epstein. Crazy Days and Nights called it. That's interesting. So I know that Jeffrey Epstein obviously had a relationship with MIT as a whole. My question would be, how closely did he work with Seth Lloyd? Because technically anybody at MIT, you could say that they would be associated with this guy who was murdered. So we'll have to look into that. Thank you, Sea to Shining Sea. And I'll look at Crazy Days and Nights. ZBM says, just as weird as those guys who were strangely murdered figured out how to make engines run off water and other cheap sources. The deep state are still trying to keep this from us peasants. 100%. Absolutely. That's exactly what's going on. Okay. Okay, so before we continue with this story, I have a very quick message from over here on Rumble. Let me pull that up. All right. Now, everybody, just a quick word about one of the most important documentaries that you could watch this year. It's called The Fall of Minneapolis. It's produced by Alpha News and award-winning journalist Liz Collin. This film blows the lid off what really happened with George Floyd, the trial, the media lies, the police body cam footage they never showed you, and how an innocent city was burned while good cops were thrown under the bus. It's already been watched over 10 million times and praised by the likes of Charlie Kirk, Megyn Kelly, Jack Posobiec, Dinesh D'Souza, Tim Pool, and many others who care about truth and justice. But the best part is right now it's 100% free. You don't have to have a subscription, no paywall. You can watch it right now, The Fall of Minneapolis, at thefallofminneapolis.com, or you can just search for it here on Rumble. And if the film opens your eyes like it has for millions of others, you can consider a 100% tax-deductible donation at alphanews.org so they can help wake up even more Americans. You deserve the real story. Watch it tonight. Use that QR code or just search over there on Rumble. Okay, and now I mentioned that yesterday we were looking for a person of interest. I thought it was a woman, but apparently it's a man. From those hips and from the soft features of the face, it sure looked like a woman to me. But this is evidently a homeless man. That homeless man was the person who posted that post on Reddit about that gray Nissan Sentra. And this homeless man is the reason that the police were able to draw the connection between these two cases and find this guy in Salem, New Hampshire. Now, he's not just, this is so weird, okay? I'll be the first to tell you that. Not only is he homeless, but he happens to be living in the basement of Brown University. That has a whole series of security connotations in and of itself. Now, this person, after he was announced as a person of interest, that the police were looking for him, he saw this and he reached out to the police. And his name is John. He is also a former student at Brown University. And on the day of the shooting, several hours before it actually happened, he saw Neves Valente hanging around inside the building. And actually, he saw him in the bathroom 2 hours before the shooting. He locked eyes with him in the bathroom, thought that he was suspicious, and then followed him out of the building before the shooting, and then was following him as he was walking around the block. So it wasn't that, like, he was there to assist, allegedly. He was following to see what the hell this guy was doing, and that's why, I guess, Claudio Neves started running away from him when he realized that he was being followed. At one point, they were just a couple of feet from each other, and Neves Valente told John on a number of occasions, stop following me, stop harassing me. So the police saw that in the video. That's when they released the pictures of Neves Valente. And John had already gone on Reddit and posted those details that we saw. Nobody picked up on it in law enforcement. And so then he called law enforcement and he said, hey, there's this post on Reddit. You should probably take a look at it. The police need to look into this, he said. Now, as he said in the post, he had followed him to his car. And Neves Valente went to go enter his car and then saw John and then backed away. And the reason he backed away is because I guess he didn't want him to know that that was the car that he was driving. So here is the post again. I'm being dead serious. The police need to look into a gray Nissan with Florida plates, possibly a rental. That was the car he was driving. It was parked in the front of the little shack behind the Rhode Island Historical Society on the Cook Street side. I know because he used his key fob to open the car. He approached it, and then something prompted him to back away. When he backed away, he relocked it. I found that odd, so when he circled the block, I approached the car, and that's when I saw the Florida plates. He was parked in the section between the gate of the RIHS in the corner of Cook and George Street. So then he called the tip line, and he said, hey, there's a Reddit post. You should probably take a look at it. But unfortunately, nobody had information about this guy before he came back and then shot those students. Not only were there cameras inside the building that were turned off, not only was the public camera layout locations published to the public as well prior to the shooting, not only was the chief of police inside Brown a DEI hire who was totally ineffectual and just bad at his job, he also apparently allowed, through a series of security lapses, a homeless dude to live in the basement of one of the prestigious Ivy League universities of the Northeast. So because of John's efforts, he is eligible for the $50,000 reward from the FBI or from the local police. So police have said that he is truly eligible for this. And here is we just spoke about this, so I don't need to play this clip. But here is another conversation about this homeless guy and the fact that he's living inside Brown University, which is just totally insane.
Open by a homeless man who goes by John. Now, investigators say that he's a former Brown University student who grew suspicious of the gunman when he locked eyes with him in the bathroom just 2 hours before the shooting inside the Barris and Holly building. The gunman, his name is Claudio Neves Valente. Now, John, pictured here, is the man police were looking to speak to because of how close he got to that gunman. John said he followed Neves Valente out of the building before the shooting and played a game of cat and mouse in the neighborhood. Surveillance video shows Neves Valente running away from John. At one point, he stood just feet away from the gunman and questioned why he was circling the block. The gunman repeatedly responded, quote, "Why are you harassing me?" When police released images of the suspect after the shooting, John wrote an anonymous Reddit post describing seeing the gunman unlock a parked gray Nissan sedan with Florida plates he thought could be a rental. 3 days after the shooting, John anonymously called the police tip line and flagged his own Reddit post. On Wednesday, John walked up to police, revealed that he was the man police were looking for, that he was close to the gunman, and that the Reddit post came from him. Police used license plate readers to track the gray Nissan to an Alamo car rental center in Boston. They pulled surveillance images showing Neves Valente, and they traced him to a storage facility in
And so that's how they got to the storage facility. Now, I don't know what to think. This is an unbelievable story from top to bottom. The only thing I'm really interested in is, at this point, the history of Claudio Neves Valente, where he's been for the last several years, if he went to Portugal and then came back and then was living in Miami. What was his affiliations? Who were the people that he was communicating with? What does his bank account look like? What is his alleged motive for killing both the MIT scientist and these two young students? I had heard something online that the class for physics was normally held in that room where the students were killed, but that because it was finals, the final was in a different room, and so this was actually a final for a different class. And so that makes it sound like it's possible that this was not a targeted killing. That could also be cover for the fact that it was a targeted killing. I don't know. But I'm not expecting much else coming from authorities in Rhode Island. I certainly hope that they don't just drop everything and stop updating us on who this man was and who he was friends with and the people that he was communicating with. I'm also hoping that in the investigation through the Portuguese authorities, perhaps they will be able to give us some additional leads about who this guy was. But I do have an interesting lead right here. Claudio Neves Valente was actually followed by a handful of people, 191 followers. And guess what? One of them was none other than Barack Hussein Obama. Isn't that interesting? Less than 200 people on X. And one of the people that he's followed by just happens to be the former president of the United States of America. The man who hates Donald Trump more than anybody else? The guy who just happens to be running the shadow deep state presidency behind the scenes? Look at this. What are the chances of that, you guys? So you can see here at amazing_5 was Claudio Neves's account. And right there, Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Hussein Obama just happens to be following the guy who randomly kills a couple of people in 2 different states. One of them a nuclear fusion scientist. It's not a fake Obama. That is the actual Obama. How do we know it's the actual Obama? Because not only does he have the blue check mark, he's also got the presidential seal, which is only given to former members of governments. Former president, right there. That's him. This has been verified. I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. This has been verified. Strange stuff. I can't wait to see what this one leads to. All right. Now, I can tell you this. Considering the fact that Claudio Neves Valente was not a citizen of the United States and he had a green card, President Trump has just suspended indefinitely the green card lottery. And this is a direct response to Claudio Neves Valente killing these 3 people in 2 different states. So President Trump has ordered Kristi Noem to suspend the diversity immigrant visa program, commonly known as the green card lottery, as a result of the shootings. The 48-year-old Portuguese national is believed to be the killer of these 3 people. Claudio Valente legally entered the United States under the diversity program in 2017, and he was granted permanent residency. The officials of the Trump administration have also confirmed that Valente first entered the U.S. on a student visa in 2000 and later adjusted to residency through the diversity lottery program. Now, Kristi Noem announced the suspension of this program yesterday. The Brown University shooter, she said, Claudio Manuel Neves Valente, entered the U.S. through the diversity lottery program in 2017 and was granted a green card. This heinous individual should have never been allowed into our country. In 2017, President Trump fought to end this program following the devastating NYC truck ramming event by an ISIS terrorist who also entered through the diversity lottery program and murdered 8 people. At President Trump's direction, I am immediately directing USCIS to pause the DV1 program to ensure no more Americans are harmed by this disastrous program. Now, also in line with President Trump and Kristi Noem's prior statements about the crackdown on immigration, the people who have come into the country through a number of different programs are now all subject to re-review. The diversity green card program would be one of those programs. So this program makes up to 50,000 green cards available each year by lottery to people from countries that have lower levels of representation inside the United States. Many of them are generally from Africa. Now, the lottery was created by an act of Congress, and it's likely that the suspension of this program is probably going to invite legal challenges. You've had nearly 20 million people who applied for the 2025 visa lottery, with more than 131,000 selected when you include spouses of the winners. After winning, they must undergo vetting to win admission to the United States. Portuguese citizens won only 38 slots in 2025. These lottery winners are then invited to apply for a green card. They are interviewed at consulates and subject to the same requirements and vetting as other green card applicants. President Trump has talked about getting rid of this program for quite some time. He's never been a fan of it. Noem's announcement is now the latest example of the ability of this administration to successfully end all of these different avenues for other nations to send their worst into the United States of America. We've had so many different cases of people attacking United States citizens, killing them as a result of their entrance into the United States through a variety of different immigration programs. It's time to get rid of all of them. Get rid of all of them. Now, We have an update about that raid in Minnesota that I showed you guys yesterday, where the FBI raided a Somali-owned health services business in Bloomington, Minnesota, and it was flagged by Health and Human Services for massive fraud. That business was United Home Health Services, and along with this raid, there were also some indictments. Now, FBI agents and a variety of other federal investigators were seen carrying boxes from this office at 17th Avenue South near Old Shakopee Road East. The business is located in a suite next to a pizza shop, an Asian market, and a laundromat. Generally speaking, that's exactly where you expect a home health services company with sensitive medical needs to set up, right where the pizza and the Asian markets meet. And inside the building, there was damage to a door that belonged to Ultimate Home Health Services. It had to be forced open because, much like all of these other Somali-owned businesses, nobody actually worked there. There was no presence inside the office space. A letter that was dated December 5th shows that the Department of Human Services had suspended the license of Ultimate Home Health Services because they were at risk of committing fraud and probably had committed a lot of fraud. The immediate suspension is based on a determination that persons served by your program are at an imminent risk of harm, and because the holder and controlling individual are the suspects of a pending administrative action related to fraud against the program, which is administered by a state agency. The letter went on to state that the state-determined clients for the business were not required services. A client who died hadn't been reported. That was the young man that we spoke about maybe a month ago, and staff had provided false information to DHS licensors. The letter also stated that the license holder is already facing administrative action for fraud against the program. So this is part of that $18 billion fraud that U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson had spoken about yesterday. This fraud is not small. It isn't isolated, he said. The magnitude cannot be overstated. What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial-scale fraud. It's swamping Minnesota, and it's calling into question everything we know about our state. Now, Tim Walz has responded to the latest update from U.S. Attorney Thompson. And even in the face of all of this, Walz continues to be defiant. As you know, he has faced calls for resignation. I think Tim Walz is right where he needs to be, at least until he's voted out of office. If anybody else takes over his job in Minnesota, then they're the ones who are going to be running against the Republican candidate. And the Republican candidate is going to have to make arguments against this person that nobody knows. At least with Tim Walz, he's the devil you know, and you can go ahead and talk all kinds of smack about the terrible things he's done for Minnesota over the last 8 years. His bald face, ignorance, and completely ignoring the many different rings of Somali fraudsters and still refusing to condemn them. Today's charges are exactly the type of strong action we need from prosecutors to put fraudsters behind bars, Tim Walz said. That's why we shut down housing stabilization services and hired an outside firm to audit these programs and stop payments to fraudulent providers. We will not tolerate fraud, he continued, and we will continue to work with our federal partners to ensure fraud is stopped and fraudsters are caught. Well, it should have happened earlier. Now, here is Alpha News commenting, and just so that we are clear, there are 6 new individuals that were charged in coordination with that raid yesterday. The people who have been charged are, unsurprisingly, all of Somali origin.
What's the latest out of Minnesota?
Yeah, we heard some pretty shocking numbers today, Will, at that press conference, talking about $18 billion paid out through these 14 programs that First Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson focused on. And he said, in his own words today, more than half of that money seems to be fraudulent. And the reporter asked, as much as 10 billion, and he quickly said absolutely. So he detailed just this explosive growth of these programs, focusing on just a few in these last few years. But I'll say that we've been checking out a lot of this for ourselves through many tips from our readers and viewers. And just this week, we visited a dozen sites, and to be honest, they all seem fraudulent. Empty adult daycares, empty autism clinics, no kids in sight, strange Google reviews that seem almost written in AI, what even look to be phony websites. And you can see right there for yourself online through a database how much money they're receiving. It's often hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars if you go ahead and total it up for the last few years. And there you see it, some nice luxury cars right in the parking lot of some of these businesses. We heard more about that today as well. Where's all this money going?
It's going straight into their pockets. It's going straight into the campaign accounts of the Democrats who are looking the other way. And it's going straight back to Somalia. The level of fraud in the state of Minnesota eclipses the entire GDP of the nation of Somalia on a yearly basis. That's how much fraud there is. Now, I have a breaking news report from my good friend Lauren Fix. The car coach reports Elise Stefanik has just dropped her bid for governor of New York. And in addition to that, she is not going to be running for re-election to Congress next term. I think that's highly notable. I wonder what's going on in the state of New York. Elise Stefanik not going to even try to be governor, and she's also no longer going to be in Congress. I wonder who's going to replace her. All right. Let me also show this clip. You know, it's a bad time to be a Somali in the United States of America.
Wouldn't want to be Somalian right now. That's it's, yeah. All the Democrats in the states are like, oh, it's just horrific watching my Somali neighbors being ripped from their homes. I'm like, if you have Somali neighbors, you live in a bad area. But I feel bad for the Somalis because, you know, they're being called garbage and they're trying to defend themselves online and they don't have anything to work with. They have like one picture and one video of Mogadishu. The picture is like from a rooftop of a building. And it's like 2 blocks from the beach, and you can see the beach, and they post it, and they go, look at Somalia, it's beautiful. And it's like, yeah, how about you turn that camera around? I want to see a guy shitting in the street with an AK-47 strapped to his back.
Oh my God, I love him so much. He's so good. Yeah, bad time to be a Somalian. Now, I saw somebody in the chat say maybe we should dig on everybody that Barack Obama follows. He actually follows like 600,000 people if you go look at it. It's the perfect cover to say that if somebody he follows does something bad, he can just say, well, I follow 600,000 people. Personally, there's no reason for anybody to follow 600,000 people. But for Barack Hussein Obama, I believe that it's cover to whitewash anybody that he follows that does something. Because if, let's say, President Trump was following somebody and they committed an act like this, you know that the mainstream media would be all over it. But in this instance, they'll say, oh, well, you know, it's a nothing burger. It's a conspiracy theory. Look how many people Barack Hussein Obama follows. Well, you know, that's what I would do if I was going to follow bad people that I was communicating with who were going to commit acts of MK Ultra assassination. You'd be following a bunch of people who, you know, just random Joes, so that you could go ahead and cover up the fact that you were following people who were part of the network. All right, now, Michael Holstrom, he is a senator in Minnesota. He put out this information. We have uncovered records outlining an alleged organized voter fraud scheme among a Somali community in Minnesota. The Trump administration needs to step in to audit our elections, and Tim Walz and Steve Simon need to get out of our way. Right here, he says, after speaking with Stearns County Auditor Treasurer Staff Affiant became concerned that the instance of double voting he'd been alerted to was caused by an ongoing pattern. I want you to remember the case that I spoke about the other day, that Somali individual who had 2 different driver's licenses with 2 different names, 2 different registered voters, and a list of a bunch of other Somali names that he was going in person to go vote on behalf of. And there may be a problem more than just one case of a voter independently violating the election laws. Affiant believed individuals associated with Huba Ibrahim were causing violations of statutes related to election laws. Further investigation is needed to determine whether the violations are made unknowingly, unintentionally, or in a manner meant to affect an election. Well, they could also just go talk to James O'Keefe and O'Keefe Media Group, because they've already uncovered a series of Somali voter fraud rings operating throughout Minnesota. And I will go on the record and say that all of this, Tajir Rage, thank you so much, Drought Tolerant. His name was also like Abdul something or else. He had two different names. So all of this is knowingly. None of it is unintentional. These people are organized. This is a community of career criminals. They know exactly what they're doing. They come to Minnesota because they already know that it is a great place to go if you want to commit fraud and you want to get a big payday. And if you want to help steal an election. It is certainly, it is an obvious fact. Okay, now, real quick, before we continue, I have another special message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, if you are still scrambling to get something for someone that you love for Christmas, then you need to hear this. Our friends at Chicago State Company have once again extended their free shipping for Christmas delivery, but their warehouse is just down to the last few slots. You can take advantage of it by going to mychicagosteak.com and use the code RUMBLE. Give your loved ones the top 2% of beef in the United States of America. USDA Prime and Premium Angus, hand-cut by master butchers with marbling so good when it hits that hot pan, the whole house is going to fill with the sounds and smells of buttery meat goodness. It's the call to the kitchen for everyone. Spend $229 and they're going to throw in 6 free ribeyes, plus you're going to get free shipping. That is $240 in premium steak on the house. Your gift shows up in a black and gold box packed with dry ice. They're going to crack it open. Vapor's going to roll out. Instant Christmas morning vibes. So don't give them another sweater or a pair of socks or a tie. Give them something that they're going to ask for again next year. And don't wait on this. The warehouse is on the line at mychicagosteak.com/rumble. Use that code RUMBLE. You can use that QR code or just type in the link that I just gave you. Use that code RUMBLE. You're going to get free shipping and 6 free ribeye steaks. Thank you very much. And Merry Christmas. Let me know if you guys get some of those steaks. I want to hear about it. All right. Now, jumping back into the news as it pertains to the efforts of the deep state to try to destroy the United States of America. Dick Durbin has just threatened federal law enforcement agents and members of the Trump administration, suggesting that if they continue to enforce the laws on behalf of this constitutional republic, when or if they regain power, they are probably going to prosecute you. They are going to destroy you. They are going to take your life and try to flush it down the toilet in the same way they did to President Trump and people that surrounded him after his first administration. Now, he made these statements as he stood on the floor of the Senate this week, saying that if the Democrat Party regained power, they are going to prosecute federal law enforcement officers because they are enforcing the law. If the Democrats regain power, then they are going to use that power to destroy those who love this country. Take a listen to Dick Durbin. Also, somebody who has repeatedly, a Democrat who repeatedly refused to release Epstein files.
President Trump has given them carte blanche to violate the law. There is a reality ahead. One day, President Trump will not be in the White House. When he goes, those who ordered these lawful activities finally may be held accountable and prosecuted.
When he goes, those who ordered these lawful activities. Did you hear that? He just gave up the ghost.
Those who ordered these lawful activities finally may be held accountable and prosecuted.
How are they going to be held accountable for the commission of lawful activities? It's their jobs. It's their jobs to uphold and enforce the law. The only thing that's different, Dick, is that now they're actually doing it because the people who are in charge love this country and are sick and tired of seeing what you and your deep state ilk have allowed this country to become over the years when you essentially had these people on the payroll and did not have them enforcing the law, engaging in lawful activities.
Section 242 of Title 18 of the U.S. Code makes it a crime for a federal law enforcement official acting under color of law to violate the constitutional rights of any person. I have no expectation that President Trump's Justice Department will investigate these violations currently taking place in Chicago.
Okay, Marine in the Woods, you say Dawa, invasion and Islamic missionary. Go search for the word. So, I mean, how is this word being used? I believe I've heard this word before, but in what context are you saying that it's being used right now?
The statute of limitations for these provisions is 5 years.
5 years. So he's essentially saying you better not allow us to come back into power, because if we come back into power within the next 5 years, we're going to go after everybody who has done this. So it's a Latino organization, the meaning of Dawa in Islam. They say from the Quran, it means invite. Invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and beautiful preaching, and argue with them in ways that are best and most gracious. For your Lord knows best who have strayed from his path and who receive guidance. So let us, variations of how it's practiced, how to give dawah. Listen, smile, be friendly, respectful, and genuine. Okay, this is like the best possible interpretation of it. From Wiki Islam, again, they're saying it's an invitation. I suppose that the invitation is different depending on who's actually engaging in it. Let's see. I want to see if Marine in the Woods has said anything else. All right, I'll wait to hear from you on that. All right, but some of those people that Dick Durbin wants to have arrested would be the people who have just arrested and charged 54 members of Tren de Aragua. You see, this particular gang that was, again, imported under the auspices of the Biden administration was involved in a sweeping multi-state criminal conspiracy. These gang members, this transnational criminal cartel, was siphoning millions of dollars from American ATMs. Now, U.S. Attorney Leslie A. Woods put together a federal grand jury in Nebraska, and they returned 2 major indictments charging these dozens of TDA operatives in this nationwide ATM jackpotting conspiracy that was siphoning millions of dollars from American banks. Now, they were using it to fund terrorism, violence here and abroad, and, of course, their particular brand of organized crime. Now, the first indictment came back on December 9th, and there were 22 defendants who were charged. Some of those crimes included conspiracy to provide material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization, conspiracy to commit bank fraud and bank burglary, computer fraud and related activity, and money laundering. Federal prosecutors allege that Tren de Aragua used a sophisticated series of malware attacks known as ATM jackpotting to force machines to dispense cash on demand. The stolen money was then laundered and transferred among TDA members to conceal its origins, and then they could use it to bankroll their violent operations. Now, the second related indictment, you may say that would have been the second indictment, because the first indictment was from October 21st of this year. That was 32 additional defendants that were charged across 56 felony accounts, also including bank fraud, burglary of a bank, computer fraud, and destruction of protected computers. So if they are convicted, and I believe they will be, considering like the amount of evidence that was used to come up with these indictments. They're facing sentences which range from 20 years to 335 years in prison. Now, the alleged conspiracy developed and deployed a variant of malware known as Plutus. That was used to hack into ATMs and then get the ATMs to spit out the cash. The conspiracy relied on the recruitment of a number of individuals to deploy Plutus malware nationwide. And members of the conspiracy and TDA would travel in groups. They would use multiple vehicles. They would go to locations of targeted banks and credit unions. And then the groups would conduct initial recon, taking note of the external security features at the ATMs. Following the recon, the groups would then open the hood or door of ATMs, and then they would wait nearby to see whether they had triggered an alarm or a law enforcement response. The groups would then take steps to install malware on the ATMs. They would remove the hard drive and install the malware directly. And by replacing that hard drive with one that had been preloaded with the Plutus software, or by connecting an external device like a thumb drive, they would then install the malware that way. The Plutus malware's primary purpose was to issue unauthorized commands associated with the cash dispensing module in the ATM so that they could force the dispensation of this currency. This is fairly high-level attack here. And then the Plutus malware was also designed to delete evidence of the malware so that they could conceal and create the false impression, mislead, or otherwise deceive employees of the banks and credit unions from learning about the deployment of the malware at the ATM. Members of the conspiracy would then split the proceeds in predetermined portions. And these pictures are of just a few instances of these attacks on these ATM machines. And look at that stack of cash. Oh my goodness. Wow, they got a lot of money. So here is a visual representation of the location of the alleged jackpotting incidents that were committed across the United States. It looks like it happened in all 50 states. In total, as of August of this year, we're talking $40.73 million from 1,529 different locations. Holy shit. And it goes back to, looks like 2000, even beyond 2000. But obviously, 2000 is when people really started coming here from Venezuela. One of the most explosive revelations involves Ximena Romina Arroyo Navarro, who is an alleged leader of TDA and a Venezuelan entertainer. He's already been sanctioned by the Treasury Department. According to Treasury officials, Arroyo Navarro allegedly helped TDA kingpin Hector Rustenford Guerrero Flores, a.k.a. Nino Guerrero, escape from Venezuela's notorious Tocaron prison in 2012. She also has been publicly photographed socializing with Guerrero at parties and events. And Arroyo Navarro is now indicted in Nebraska on charges of providing material support to Tren de Aragua, stemming from her role in coordinating and funding the ATM jackpotting operation that included these burglaries across Nebraska. Wow, this is so sophisticated. Absolutely insane. I am shocked that they were able to get ATMs open, wipe the hard drive, install their own hard drive with the malware, and they were able to get away with it for as long as they were. Absolutely insane. But very good news that they did get caught, and hope that many more people are going to be indicted as a result. Now, President Trump also had a speech that he gave from the Oval Office earlier today on the brand new Trump RX website and the new favored nation status for pharmaceuticals here in the United States. He went through a list of some of these medications to show just how low the price was going to go on some of them. And as an example, blood thinners, which previously cost $750, now are only going to cost $16. HIV medication, don't have unprotected sex at rest stops. It goes from $1,500 to $217. Hep B medications, $1,400 down to $413. Hep C medication from $25,000 down to $2,500. This is just some of them. There are a lot more medications out there, and everything is now going to be incredibly cheap.
$750. Think of that, $750, and that's the number one blood thinner. I don't want to know about that. I take an asprin. to less than $16. Think of that. Bristol Myers Squibb, great company, both great companies, will cut the price of HIV.
Cyrus, it was in every state. I don't think that there was a single state that didn't have a dot on it. And it was over $40 million.
Medication, Raytaz, from nearly $1,500, $1,500 to $217. And it will cut the cost of hepatitis B medication, Baraclude, from $1,400 to $413. Gilead will cut the hepatitis C medication, Epclusa, from nearly $25,000 to less than $2,500. And all prices are like that because we're bringing them down to the world's lowest price, everything. And these people...
As soon as this website goes live, I'm just going to go through and start looking for medications and seeing what the difference is going to be. So somebody in the chat had mentioned, shouldn't this lower the cost of insurance? First of all, just like government, when companies raise their prices to a certain price, they are loath to lower those prices. Theoretically, it should reduce the cost of health insurance because now health insurance is not going to need to be paying for all of these expensive medications. But I don't know how quickly it's going to happen. It also should lower the cost of insurance now that the subsidies from Obamacare are no longer going to be flowing into their coffers. It should also lower the cost of insurance now that many people across the country are simply not going to be willing to pay for insurance because they have risen to prices that are far beyond what people can afford. Now, I've had a number of people send me links to like private medical groups. It's basically like you're just banding together with a bunch of other people who don't have insurance. You pay like $200 a month or something like that, and it gives you access to medical care. I'm going to be looking into those things, but I think that I'm just going to try to not do it and also not get sick. It's not going to be that difficult. As long as I don't end up in the hospital, I should be fine. But if I end up in the hospital, that'll be something that I have to deal with at that point. I want to see how this is all going to play out, and I want to see how it's going to change the healthcare industrial complex landscape out there. I think that this inevitably will lower prices for everyone, but I don't think it's going to happen overnight. Yeah. I am already up to date on herbalism. I take, all kinds of stuff. Really, the only reason that I have insurance is in case something unforeseen happens and I end up in the emergency room. Like after we first moved to Florida, I dropped my bike, okay? Hit a patch of sand, boom, flew over my handlebars. I thought I broke my clavicle, and we had to go to the emergency room. It was like $6,500 for a 2-hour visit. And I didn't have insurance. So, I got gun shy, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll buy insurance. But, I go to the doctor twice a year for just like a annual checkup. And just to make sure that like all of my vitals are where they need to be, even though the vitals that they tell me, it's more that I can't take those measurements myself. I also can't take, I can't get my blood drawn and get tests done without orders from the doctor. So, but all of that, I'm just not going to be dealing with it anymore. All right, continuing. We have yet another case of a black student stabbing and killing a white student at a high school. This is incredibly similar to the case that we had earlier this year, where the young track student, the twin brother of another athlete, was stabbed in the heart by a black kid. And yet again, the exact same thing has happened. This time, a 16-year-old by the name of Andrew Meismer was stabbed by an 18-year-old student named Andre Matthews. He was stabbed with a pair of scissors in class, and Andre has a history of violent altercations. Now, this has almost immediately captured the attention of everybody at the school because people knew exactly what kind of a kid Andre was. And there are students that are protesting the administration at the school because they are angry that nothing was done about this. The Harris County DA's office on Friday has charged Matthews with murder. God, I can't even imagine. Like, he just stabbed him with a pair of scissors. Meismer was airlifted to a hospital on Wednesday, but he, of course, died from his injuries. Goose Creek Superintendent Dr. Randall O'Brien addressed the fatal stabbing. After careful consideration, the administration decided that the best way to serve our students and faculty in the wake of this tragedy would be to come together as a campus and provide in-person support. That's great. Yeah. Good news afterwards, huh? To that end, we reopened Sterling on Thursday morning with a full crisis response team in place, and we're ready to serve our students and staff as they process yesterday's events. I'm sure that everybody who witnessed this kid get stabbed to death in the middle of class, they're going to have a lot of processing to do. Dr. O'Brien said the school was limited by local and state laws amid criticism of its lack of action in response to Matthews' prior violent altercations. These laws exist to protect students and families, even when outcomes are difficult to understand in the aftermath of tragedy, he wrote. So this was at Baytown Sterling High School. Let's see. Matthews has been at the Baytown jail. He's expected to be transferred to the Harris County jail. Goose Creek CISD Police Department approved the release, and they put out Matthews' booking photo. Let's see if we've got any insight into the type of kid that he was before he murdered someone in the middle of his biology class.
It's been a heartbreaking day watching students from Sterling High School stand out here for hours protesting against their school district and the school district leaders. They say in their minds Andrew Meismer did not have to die, but now that he is dead, he deserves justice.
Justice for Andrew! Justice for Andrew!
A constant stream of students stood in front of Sterling High School all day, demanding justice for their friend and classmate, Andrew Meismer.
He was a great guy. He didn't deserve this. And the school district is out here. They're not separating these kids that clearly aren't fit to be in a normal classroom environment and are a danger to other students.
Multiple students say Meismer was stabbed on Wednesday in science class after he got in a fight with the other student. But they also say the stabbing suspect has a long disciplinary history at school.
A few teachers were complaining about the student beforehand about all the assault charges and knives that he brought on campus, but nothing was ever done about it.
The students told us that despite repeated offenses, the 18-year-old suspected of stabbing Meismer was always allowed to return to school.
My main problem with them is that, it's just business as usual, even though a child is dead. Somebody's child died on their property, and it's like, come take your finals and go to school.
Justice for Andrew!
Students say Andrew Meismer and his family deserve so much more transparency.
I think that it was crazy. I don't think that should ever happen to anybody, no matter what they have done.
The students say they will be back here tomorrow morning once again to protest until their voices are heard. We should note we have repeatedly asked the school district to speak publicly about this because clearly the kids want to hear something, and so far we have been met with silence.
I can't tell you how proud I am of these kids for standing up for the right thing, for not simply whitewashing this and acting like, because this is a black kid, we can't talk about it, that we should just whitewash past it. So many in the other instance that we spoke about earlier this year, they just wanted to completely ignore it. And they tried to blame the kid who was murdered rather than the actual perpetrator of the murder. The problem that we have, the reason that we keep seeing this happening is because people have essentially been given free rein to malign, to physically attack, and to kill white people. Because white people are the enemy. White people were the enslavers. White people were the colonizers. White people were the enemy. Okay? And because there has been this psychological implication of violence as a permissible response, you have these horrific acts that continue to be committed, and Unfortunately, in an effort to not be racist or not profile people, the kids who have a history of violence, rather than addressing that history of violence and treating them in the way that they need to be treated, they are allowed to entertain their baser instincts. And then it comes down to something like this, where someone dies who did not need to die. This is a disservice, not only to the kid who lost his life, but now this other kid who is allowed to behave in an animalistic way, to think that violence was an acceptable response in a situation like this. His life is over. He's never going to amount to anything. He's never going to be anything other than an inmate. He's never going to be anything other than somebody's bitch for the rest of his life, because they like them young and inexperienced when they get to prison. Opteezy says, I saw this 6 days ago. Is this a separate stabbing? Let me take a look. Okay, so black student stabs autistic classmate in the face at an Atlanta high school, screams white bitch. Unfortunately, this is a separate case. Imagine if the races were reversed. Video from North Atlanta High School shows a student pulling scissors from his backpack and stabbing another student multiple times in the head and face. The victim, who is white, was hospitalized with blood pouring down his face, and the victim is also reportedly autistic. Oh, reports indicate he may have been stabbed in the eye. Jeez, oh, Pete's. After the attack, the assailant ran toward the victim screaming white bitch before being stopped by another individual. I don't want to watch this video, but we'll finish the description. One student sustained an injury involving a pair of scissors. School staff responded to secure the area, ensure the safety of all students, and provide care to the injured student. The school called it an isolated incident with no ongoing threat. It's not isolated. That's the problem. Classes resumed as normal after a brief soft lockdown. Criminal charges are pending. The investigation is being handled by Atlanta Public Schools Police. One parent told reporters her child was also stabbed at the same school last year. So not an isolated incident. If a white student had stabbed a black student while screaming a racial slur, this would be a lead story on every national network and classified as a hate crime. Yeah, it absolutely would be. All right. It is totally okay for these attacks to occur. The guy got stabbed in the eye. Poor kid. Jeez, oh, Pete's. And yeah, Carmelo Anthony. Here's the other thing. Carmelo Anthony, the $540,000 that he and his family raised for his defense, it's all gone. They don't have any money left. They don't have any money left. They have raised their goal to $1.4 million, it says here. Let's get an update. Let's see what's happening with the Carmelo Anthony case, because I haven't heard anything in quite some time. All right. So this is an update from 5 months ago. Anthony was indicted on one count of first-degree murder. Law enforcement have said that he will not face the death penalty because he was 17 when he committed the crime. So again, this is in Texas. He's definitely going to end up in prison for the rest of his life. Trial date has been set. So, when is the trial date? I don't know. I'm pretty certain it's not going to be until next year. And there is a gag order for the trial, so we're not going to hear anything until he's found guilty. Yeah, that's okay. So the gag order is probably why we're not hearing anything about it. That sucks. That sucks. Yeah. All right. Now, we have another incident that did not need to happen. Another illegal alien, 54 years old, couldn't speak English properly, killed a 31-year-old American citizen on American roads because he was issued a commercial driver's license in New York, and he became a bus driver. So Homeland Security say that Yisong Huang, who cannot speak English, arrived via Mexico in 2023, was released under the Biden administration. was given a CDL in New York, a sanctuary state. And last week on a Tennessee highway, he reportedly caused a major pileup by running into a tractor trailer while he was distracted by a video on his phone. Kerry Smith, 31-year-old American citizen, was killed in the accident, and Wong is now charged with vehicular manslaughter. This is a case that is so familiar at this point. It seems like every single day we learn about this stuff. Wong was able to get a Class B CDL on April 11th of this year, and although he was an illegal, he was able to establish a lawful presence through the state of New York until 2029. And New York, rather than taking the blame for this, accepting responsibility, they are blaming the federal government. The DMV spokesperson for the state of New York said, Secretary Duffy is lying about New York State once again in a desperate attempt to distract from the failing, chaotic administration he represents. Here's the truth. Commercial driver's licenses are regulated by the federal government, and New York State DMV has and will continue to comply with federal rules. Every CDL we issue is subject to verification of an applicant's lawful status through federally issued documents reviewed in accordance with federal regulations. This is just another stunt from Secretary Duffy, and it does nothing to stop or to keep our roads safer. We will review U.S. DOT's letter and respond accordingly. Now, this, of course, is true in one sense because the rules that were in place under the Biden administration made it possible for this individual to go to the state of New York. Now, foregoing the fact that he could not speak English, that definitely would be on the shoulders of the state of New York. I mean, like, they would be the ones who would determine whether or not he qualified for a DMV based upon his ability to pass tests, upon his ability to actually drive a vehicle of this size. But the lawful status that he was given was a complicated and convoluted status as determined by the Biden administration. And Secretary Duffy has already demanded the state of New York, state of California, every state in the United States to physically inspect the CDLs of the people that they have passed them out to and determine if they now fall under the updated status of a legal alien having entered this country in any other manner other than what would be considered legal now. Those licenses must be revoked. And so the fact that Wong failed an English proficiency test should have been reason enough to not give him a CDL at that time. But the state of New York, the state of California, state of Washington, they don't care. They simply did not bother. There were millions of people who came into this country and probably ended up getting CDLs at any of these states. And there are many who have been taken off these roads, but there are still many, many more who are driving around and not only committing active crimes like robbery, murder, DUI, but they are, in effect, killing people who are innocent and would otherwise be going home to their families at the end of the day. All right. Now, as we have learned in a number of Democrat-run areas, police have, for the last several years, been reclassifying crimes from felonies to misdemeanors and then dropping them altogether through the prosecutor's office so that they could massage crime statistics and lie to the people that they are ostensibly meant to be keeping safe, but instead they are keeping them in a state of heightened danger because they are lying about the true nature of crime on the streets. This is an incident about Gilbert, Arizona, where the police were doing exactly what they were doing in D.C. They are falsifying crime statistics by underreporting and also by lowering the status of certain crimes to make them less sexy on the reporting standards. So let's take a look at Gilbert, Arizona, where they have been doing this, not just recently, but apparently they've been doing it there for years. And the citizens are not happy.
My name is Bill Spence. I'm a resident of Gilbert and a former Gilbert councilman. This past July, I had a series of conversations with Councilmember Kenny Buckland regarding Gilbert's public records program. During these conversations, he made several concerning statements about Gilbert Police Department policies implemented by former Police Chief Tim Dorn. In reference to Chief Dorn, he said He fudged numbers. He changed how we do our calls for service. We went from 15,000 emergency calls a year down to just over 500. He created a priority zero, which nobody else had. The creation of a priority zero reporting category lowered GPD's reported response time from 6 minutes 31 seconds down to 4 minutes, and artificially lowered the police manning requirement simply by manipulating the numbers. In 2010, a study by Corona Solutions said that Gilbert needed 46 additional officers based on the workload and work goals. The fudged numbers by GPD said we needed 202 officers, when Corona Solutions said that we needed 274. We only had 228. Gilbert Police Department has been significantly understaffed for the last 15 years due to this unlawful policy, and the police officers and the residents have suffered as a result. Councilmember Buckland continued by saying, for the next 6 years, I fought with him saying, you're killing this town. You're putting our people at risk. You're putting our community at risk. Regardless, in 2016, Gilbert was named the safest city in the U.S. among the 100 largest cities by the FBI based on the UCR data that was provided by the town. Chief Dorn was allowed to retire in March 2017. Mike Silver became chief in June 2017. The Priority Zero policy was codified by Chief Solberg in January 2018, and the practice continued until 2023, when the reporting systems no longer allowed for this type of data manipulation. We were no longer the second safest city in the country. This information is in no way suggesting any misconduct by the rank and file police officers that risk their lives every day protecting the community. These officers are also victims of bad policies and corrupt leadership. This also does not implicate any wrongdoing by Councilmember Buckland. He tried for...
I'd like to point something else out, too. Considering that the police department budget is paid for by the residents of a town, and they were under hiring, and they had been for 15 plus years, does anybody here think that they were not collecting the taxes that were otherwise coming in to fund their budget? I'm certain that they weren't. I'm certain that they were still collecting as much money and even raising funds that were necessary for artificially inflating these crimes, or to artificially deflate these crimes, and to not actually hire the people that were necessary to successfully keep this city safe. I'm sure that they were getting just as much money, but then they were using it for other things, and maybe even giving themselves a little bit of a cushion if necessary.
Several years to change this policy, but was subjected to retaliation like so many others who tried to expose the truth. I have been repeatedly harassed and threatened with civil and criminal action by council members, the town, and even Chief Solberg. The town has taken extraordinary steps to prevent me from accessing these records. They even hired an outside law firm to investigate me. The public records narrative being pushed by the town was intended to intimidate residents into silence and discourage them from requesting information. And now we know some of what the town is trying to hide. There is so much more information to disclose and so many more things to investigate. Patrick Banjer and Chief Solberg were made aware of the trouble caused by these policies, yet they continued to reporting manipulated information. They betrayed our police officers, misled numerous councils, and jeopardized the safety of our residents. The council has a legal and ethical responsibility to take action. I am demanding an immediate investigation of the town from an outside law enforcement agency. Failure to do so would make this entire council complicit in the conspiracy to cover up misconduct in what may be the biggest scandal in the history of our town.
Good for you.
Okay, thank you.
Wow. And do you think they're going to do it? Probably not. Doubt that's going to happen. So later, the man who was just speaking shared in an interview that emergency calls that were moved out of Gilbert's highest priority into that lower priority zero included things like bank robberies and injury collisions. He said we had 15,000 emergency calls for service. Simply by manipulating these numbers and establishing this so-called priority zero, we took 14,500 calls and moved them into a different priority, which meant that there were only 500 calls available for the most severe type of police response. Oh my God. There is not a place in the United States that corruption is not the order of the day. Every single place you go, people are the worst.
Gilbert, Arizona, a town known nationwide, the beauty found in its quiet family streets, endorsed by an impressive federal designation, one of the safest places to live. But some say it's all a lie.
The question is, are we as safe as we told the public we were?
Police officers and the residents have suffered as a result.
Last month, former Councilman Bill Spence pulling back the curtain during public comment. Spence detailing a conversation he had with current town councilman Kenny Buckland, who used to be high up within Gilbert Police.
During these conversations, he made several concerning statements about Gilbert Police Department policies implemented by former Police Chief Tim Dorn.
Spence says Buckland told him a decade ago Gilbert Police changed crime reporting protocol, designating a new priority for calls for service.
In reference to Chief Dorn, he said he fudged numbers.
The change was called Priority Zero.
And he specifically talked about bank robberies, injury collisions were the ones that he had cited that were specifically moved out of the highest priority into another priority.
Spence says Priority Zero is abnormal. Data's typically track Priority 1 through 4, and when calls got moved, you could see the difference.
So you know what happens when cops stop enforcing laws on like real crimes? They still have to stay busy. They start going after the residents because then they look at you as a tool for revenue generation. Then they start seeing how many tickets they can write, how many enforcements they can come after you for. Can they put you in jail? It's all, you know, what's better? You're going to have like a dangerous felon filling up the space in your local jail, or would you rather have like a soccer mom who was speeding or something like that? They know that they're going to be able to get money out of that soccer mom. They know that they're probably also not going to have to deal with an unruly inmate. Instead, if they had a bank robber or like a dangerous career criminal, there's like a whole level of heightened awareness.
15,000 emergency calls for service. Simply by manipulating the numbers and establishing a priority zero, we took 14,500 calls and moved them into a different priority, leaving only 500 calls for our most severe calls for service.
The new numbers sent to the FBI, creating a resounding designation as the 2022 second safest city in America.
Well, in that specific instance, it took our response times, our reported response times, from 6 minutes and 31 seconds down to under 4 minutes. By doing nothing but changing the database.
Spence says the town's newfound reputation came at a cost. With less crime comes fewer officers, but it's all based on bad numbers.
Absolutely insane. So yeah, this is not something that is isolated. The Center for American Progress has summed up the FBI's crime data. The overall rates of violent and property crime in the United States declined in 2024, recording the lowest property crime rates and lowest violent crime rates since at least 1969. Does anybody think that it is safer in America today than it was in 1969? Absolutely not. It is far more dangerous to be alive in the United States of America today. And again, this happens in Washington, D.C. That's why the Justice Department is going after them. That's why the police chief in D.C. was just forced to resign. That's why we talked about the House Oversight report that was just released about her. This is not something that she just made up. I think that this is a tactic that is used all across the country. And I would like to know who made this up. Like, whose idea was this? And when did they start using it? Let's see. Optizi says, I need your help, brother, getting the word out. We are dealing with in Colorado. Xcel cut off power on Wednesday at 5 p.m. until Thursday at 2. Now today our power will be out from 5 a.m. today to 10 p.m. tomorrow. Why did they cut the power off? Is that just for you guys, or is that for like your entire neighborhood? Is there something going on there, or did they cut a line? Tell me a little bit more about what's going on, but I'm sorry that's what you're dealing with. All right. Now, also, Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, recently did an interview with Reason magazine. And in this discussion she had, she apparently admitted that the response to the Los Angeles fires was botched. Now, the only thing is the audio where she admits the botched response from authorities, it's been cut from the interview, and nobody can tell us exactly why. Now, this isn't like breaking news. Everybody knows that LA screwed up with these fires. It wasn't just the local fire departments, though. It was a series of events which led to the fire department not having the resources that it needed to fight these fires. And it was also Gavin Newsom's state government essentially forcing the local fire department to not completely extinguish this blaze before it was allowed to come back and then set fire to the Palisades and kill a number of people. So it's interesting. I wonder why this audio has been removed. Now, nobody at Reason Magazine is admitting it, but I would think that Karen Bass's people probably reached out to them and said, we simply can't allow for this to remain in here. All right, you guys, we're going to go through these final thank yous over here on Rumble and over here on Pilled. Before we do, one final message from the good folks over there at Rumble. Parents, let's talk about something truly important at a time when truth, faith, and free speech are under attack. There was one young leader who stood up and said, "Prove me wrong," and that leader was Charlie Kirk, and his message inspired an entire generation. It's why the Kids Guide team created the Kids Guide to Charlie Kirk, to help you share the values he lived by: faith, family, and independent thinking, and the courage to stand for truth. He wasn't afraid to say what others were scared to say out loud. His message was simple: don't silence people, debate them, prove me wrong. And that spirit of open conversation and respect is something our country desperately needs again. Inside the Kids Guide to Charlie Kirk, your kids will follow Charlie growing up in a Christian household. They'll learn how he spoke as a teenager, challenged one-sided narratives in school, and launched Turning Point USA from a single card table on a college campus, eventually inspiring millions nationwide. The Kids Guide to Charlie Kirk presents Charlie not as a flawless figure, but as someone who believed deeply in conversation, critical thinking, and the idea that Americans have far more in common than what divide us. If you want your kids to grow up with a strong, unwavering value, start with the Kids Guide to Charlie Kirk by visiting charliekirkguide.com to order your copy today and give your children the truth and a role model who lived it. That, once again, is charliekirkguide.com. All right, so Opteasy says that the backstory is it's supposedly for high winds and possible fires. Okay, so let's check out this link right here. I think that this is going to give us the backstory. Okay, turn our effing power back on. You said it would be restored by 6 p.m. A neighborhood half mile north of us has power and has power with above power lines, but yet we don't with underground power lines. There's hardly any wind, and it's starting to effing rain. Make it make sense.
Raining. Hey, Excel. It's now 8 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. You said our power would be on at 6, and then gave a stark warning that it might be 3 days now with our power off. It's very little wind. It's fucking raining, which helps with the fires you're worried about. And the wind that you're worried about is non-existent. So turn our fucking power on. A mile north of us, in Old Town, that has exposed and above ground power lines, they have their power.
Yeah, dude, that makes no sense. You have underground power lines and your power is cut off. It's got to have something to do with the way that the power lines are or the power is actually distributed. But the fact that they have above ground power lines and that power is working, yours isn't.
Main Street. North of Main, open. South of Main, no power. Safe, not safe.
Yeah, that does not make sense. And one more from Opteasy. Let me pull that up. All
right. Power's been out for almost 12 hours now. Why? Apocalyptic winds.
Where's the wind?
Why? Not everyone has generators. Not everyone has places they can try to get their food to. And we were just notified, not only would they be doing this from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. today, they're not going to turn it on at 6 p.m. tonight. They told us that they're going to wait until 10 p.m. tomorrow on Saturday. That's almost 40 hours.
Dude, I'm so sorry. That's awful. All I can say, and I see Nuke said it in the chat, this is the best reason to prep. You know, I know it's an expense, but it's an expense worth having. Get yourself a gas generator. Get yourself maybe some of those solar generators. You know, we've got batteries, and then we've also got a generator too, just in case we go out, we lose the power. We've lost the power like one time significantly since we've moved here. And if we didn't have the generator, then I don't know what we would have done. I'm sorry you're dealing with that, bro. Hopefully everything gets turned back on. Heading on over here to Pilled, pardon me. Let's see. Mighty Patriot, thank you for the phone. Filter Dog says the key tip came from a homeless guy living in a basement at Brown. Yes, that is what they're saying. Rise Attire says Allahu Akbar with some shades. Thank you for that, my friend. Let's see. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Let's see. Red Gun, thank you for the can. Good Dog says he's a China pedo-loving mother effer. Sean Joe dropped 3 cookies as well. All right, you guys. And don't forget about the final sponsors of the program. That's going to be my friends over there at onenessdrops.com/BOGO Red Pill 78. When you use that code BOGO Red Pill 78, you'll get a buy one, get one free on everything on the website, not just the chlorine dioxide water purification kits, which are good for lots of things, but also the mullein extract, the soursop extract, the HCl drops for your stomach, the DMSO, and you can also get these bundle packs, which are already discounted pricing with a number of different things in them, so you can try them all. And then you'll also get one free of all of those with BOGO Red Pill 78. You can also just use the code Red Pill 78 and get 15% off single items if for some reason you don't want a free item. But definitely worth checking out. And then, of course, my friends over at mypillow.com, Mike Lindell, RP78, save up to 80% off with that code. Red Pill 78 over at consciousstrength.net. That's where I get my methylene blue. You know what? It might be RP78. Okay, Opteezy says, I bought a generator years ago. Learned today that it wouldn't power our fridge the hard way. Generator is 15 amp, not 20 amp. Wattage doesn't matter. Live and learn. Yeah, dude, that is definitely a hard one. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, bro. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, you've got to have like the right cable. You've got to have the right type of generator. There's a lot of stuff to take into account there. Sorry to hear that. If you get one of those, the battery generators, then you can definitely run the fridge off of that. And, you know, if you have the solar panels, you can, you know, charge it during the day. But either way, 2020, hindsight's 2020, dude. And I know you don't want to hear people telling you what you should do now. I'm so sorry. And then, My Patriot Supply. Prepare with redpill78.com. They actually have solar generators on sale there right now. 3,300 watt solar generators. And you can do a buy one, get two Christmas special. You get 4-week food supply. You'll get 2 extra weeks for free. They have a bunch of different things that you can order right now. Prepare with redpill78.com. And I even help out by sharing the show. And if you want to hear what else I have to say, come on over to Rumble later on. All right.